Look at all those chickens. So many. Very cute. Cute chickies. Oh. So let's start off with doing a bit of farming. Then I'll go make some bread and stuff. Then I'll head to the Mistlands and collect some shits. Oh, these chickens are going to get really annoying. Hello.
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 Hi, Troy. How are you?
Not bad. How are you?
I'm good. I'm knackered though. I had such a busy past week. Very busy.
Yeah, I had a big weekend.
What did you do?
It's my friend's birthday party on Saturday, so I was drinking loads at his before, and then we went into town, did some karaoke, went to this massive club, which was fucking horrible. The DJ was literally like not playing. He was like, you know, when people think that DJs just press play and then dance around like an idiot. He literally was doing that.
Gutted.
But then I just went to this other bar and was out till 8 a.m.
8.
Yeah.
Fuck. That's late.
But you at some festival?
In Lancaster, they had this like music festival. So they were playing. They had like 50 venues, all with different music. It was pretty cool.
Sweet.
Oh yeah, it was fun.
A bit like tram lines, where it is in Sheffield.
Yeah, yeah, but Lancaster style.
So shit. Lil Poopy.
With a bobby. Oh, what were we doing? Were we getting more marble?
Yeah, I wanna. I'm just doing the farming stuff, and then I'm gonna
Do you have any
go
more?
and go get like mushrooms and stuff because there's loads of food and things we can make, especially the magic food, which I wanna like start doing the magic and see how well it performs against those like insects and stuff.
We need more 8 dead. I'm gonna bring over the sap that we've got, 28 sap, and the rest of the flesh or whatever it's called. We'll make more 8 dead. Soft tissue, that's it.
But yeah, all the chickens just hatched as soon as I got on the game. They all just like popped out, and it was like, oh, there's chickens everywhere.
Surprise.
It'd be cool as well if we could get so if we should like tame some wolves and fill this moat with wolves.
Yeah, we could do that, yeah. Or we could tame some new ones there.
Yeah, that's what
We're
I'm
next
thinking.
door. Just gonna grab some food.
All right.
Um, I've just started my lunch break.
Yeah.
I've got some stuff that I can just heat up, so it's a busy. Right, I'm gonna put on the 8 dead first.
We've got so much fucking flour, it's unreal.
Yeah, we don't know what to do with it all, do we? Do we want to kill the boss, the plains boss, or not? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So the blame boss triggers the next like.
The swarm invasions, yeah, and
That's
they'll
so
fuck our
stupid.
shit up. They'll fuck our shit up so bad.
Has that always been the case where like the next?
Yeah.
There's no way we can protect against that shit, can we? Like even stone, they just fucking.
You can get these ballistas. I'm not sure how we unlock them.
Oh yeah, that's what the missiles are for, isn't it?
Automatic firing ballistas, yeah. So yeah, we could get some more marble, sure. Oh, I did a little bit of exploring, by the way.
Why are you so
I think I found.
loud?
I'm a loud boy. I did some exploring of the south side of the area down here.
I see.
So I found yeah. So I found some spots. I think I found where the Queen base is, but I didn't go near it. There's like quite a lot of strong enemies there.
Where are all the chicks at? They all like want to like. They all seem to like walk in one direction.
Really, they're all like synchronized.
Yeah, they've all gone to the top corner. It's like they want to go up. I need some fine wood.
Nice. I can build the next upgrade for the that magic crafting table.
Sweet. We don't have any fine wood.
The unfading candles.
Apparently, there's a sword you can get which clears the mist as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it like clears it like a bit of a range around you. Can't remember what it's called though.
Yeah, I heard about it. I can't remember either. Let me get some food on sec. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. What are you doing now?
Just getting hair me and those Jotun puff things.
Jotun puff things.
They're like orange puffy things that are ingredients for stuff.
Okay, yeah. I can come help you. What was the name of that sword that clears the mist?
Can't remember. You could probably just Google it, right?
Mm.
Mist clear sword. Shit.
It looks quite good though with this marble. I'm enjoying it.
That's so nice with the feather cape.
Oh no, no more fall damage. It's such a ball ache and such a waste of food. Oh shit. Yeah, I need to redesign this like little base now because the shapes are all different. It might be good putting like maybe a spiral staircase in. I don't know.
Yeah.
Might save some space.
Oh, how's it aggroed me? It's so far away.
One sec. Oops.
Oh fuck!
in need of aid.
AIDS.
AIDS. I just love shit food like chips. It talks to me. Ooh, what's he saying there?
Something about breaking bones.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Oh shit, there's a tick on me.
I'm coming to you.
I keep getting going around in circles.
I didn't know the ticks spawned outside the dungeons.
I think it's because I was near something.
Oh, I refined a bunch of ether. What is it you're looking for? More shrooms?
Shrooms and those puffs.
We could build in that Draugr mine area where it's all clear.
Droga mine.
I
Oh, I
think I
see.
found a good spot. I found a good spot down south actually that was all clear.
Oh my god, a fucking another one.
I can.
Is that you?
No.
What's attacking it? Oh, it's a dwarf.
I'm close.
Why do your bites always sound so cartoonish?
Really?
Yeah, they literally sound like cartoons. And you like that.
Matthew Lawson when he drinks, it sounds like cartoon.
Gulp, 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 gulp. Well met.
Well met. Oh my god, what's that? Seeker soldier. Get fucked. Oh, you're here.
Come closer. These are so tanky.
Mm.
We need to get my bow skill up, man.
They're easier to kill than the Seekers.
Because they're predictable.
Their attack animation is slower. Seekers can attack you straight afterwards.
I'm out of arrows.
Okay. Yeah, we could build a farm here, maybe. Or that other place that I found. It's a bit further away.
This place feels a bit exposed.
Well, would raise it up. Build a moat.
You raise me up so I could stand on mountains. You raise me up beyond the stormy sea.
I'm going to try and disconnect it from the bottom so it all collapses together.
Don't know if that happens.
Yeah, well, it happened with the armor. Remember we had a circle of armor?
Yeah.
Did it with that.
Where's the choke point?
I don't know, I've removed some bits below. Yeah, it's connected here, isn't it? Yeah, it's connected to the ancient route, so I need to destroy it here. Is it attached to anything down below?
Yeah, it's like right in the wall.
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna be like other rocks that it.
Hmm?
It's probably just gonna be like other rocks where it just floats.
I don't think it does. Because if it's in the new patch along with the armor, I'm hoping it just has the same mechanics as the armor.
But like, it's so much in the ground still.
Mm. Okay, I think is it floating at this point?
That bit's touching.
It is floating, isn't it? That's fucking annoying.
Oh no, there's a bit here touching. No, it's not. What about this piece?
Whoa, what was that?
Just the soft tissue breaking.
Should find a dungeon. Or did we get anything useful from the dungeons?
You are?
Did we get anything useful out of the dungeons? I don't remember we got anything that good last time.
Not last time we didn't.
It takes so long to do this. We should upgrade our picks.
Yeah, mine's only level 1.
Same. Oh, there's marble blocks here as well. We could just cut down with a stone cutter.
Why are you doing that?
Trying to get marble out of it.
I want to go upgrade my shit.
It's so tanky, I'm coming with you. What does it take?
I think it's just black metal, isn't it?
Metal. Like metal.
What's the best way to get out
Spikes.
of here?
Over here. Not that way, this way. This way, come with me, follow me.
Should make path. I need to update my cartography table.
Toggy table. Shit, wrong place. It's here. There we go.
Seeker.
They always spawn here, the right fuckers. You see it?
See what?
The Seeker.
Nor. I've been poisoned. What?
Yeah, it's the Aether.
Fucking cock.
The Ether.
Oh god.
Oh, I'm gonna poke with a sword like that. I can remember. You cultivating there?
Yeah?
Isn't it a little exposed?
Why?
Well, before you said the other place is exposed. But at least the other place you can see. You can't see here.
Yeah, but I just want... shit. Nothing's gonna happen to it.
I want it now.
I want the world. I want the whole world. I want to lock it all up in my pocket. Give it to me now.
What is that off?
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Veruca! Augustus Gloop.
Augustus Gloop. My name is Augustus Gloop. I love chocolate.
More of the chickens have hatched.
Huzzah.
Huzzah, I say, huzzah. Okay, so if I want to upgrade, what do I need? It's just black metal and Yggdrasil wood. Which I think we have plenty of. I hear they call these sweets are called sour's gummy, but they're not sour at all.
Are they like more sensitive to sour in Japan?
I guess so. Like, these are less sour than like regular like Haribo colour bottles.
And I don't really eat sweets, so
What?
I don't actually eat sweets. I eat chocolate.
They are
I
sweet.
love chocolate.
Chocolate is sweet.
Yeah, but it's different to sweet.
Ha-he, half and hum. Turn this water into rum.
Ooh, shitty poo.
You cannot kill the metal.
The metal lives on.
Oh, it's pricey. Fuck me, another 25. Best be killing some bloody what's-its, Mate, there are chickens and hens fucking everywhere. It's great. We need to make the chicken coop look nicer. It's a bit shit looking.
We've got a lot of stone to use if you want to make it out of stone.
Are you
Yeah,
out of
it
your
just looks boop.
fucking mind?
Looks boopy.
Oh, I'm such an idiot.
Why?
I didn't upgrade the pickaxe. I made another one.
Oh my god.
I'm a fucking mong.
Ignoremos.
Fuck. Right. So annoying. You think, oh, I'll upgrade my pickaxe so I'll do stuff quicker, and then to actually upgrade it, you have to go and like do 15 raids on villages and such.
It's a bit of a ball ache. Big attack, skeleton survives. Where'd you upgrade it at?
The forge.
Oh, we should make carapace shields. Would block a lot more damage.
Oh my god, there's so many.
How much carapace do we have? I only see 2 in the chest. Oh no, wait. I see 32. Okay, what can maybe we can make a piece. I can make a carapace greaves. Do you want a carapace greaves?
Sure.
5 iron, 20 carapace. We need to collect 8 more carapace, then I can make a set.
This raid's ridiculous.
Skeletons everywhere. Do you want carapace greaves or a carapace shield?
Greaves.
I'm not sure what the difference between the buckler and the shield is.
I think a buckler's like less heavy, so you don't use as much.
Run faster.
Yeah. I just got 50 bones.
Nice. Okay, here's the greaves.
Thank you. Oh, well, our wolf's dead.
The spawning wolves aren't. They should be alive still. Yeah, we have loads of stone to raise land. Troy, just here.
Sweet. Meat. I put a Rancid Remains trophy on the swamp. On the swamp door.
Oh, I forgot they even exist.
Mate, this pen design is genius. Like, if you don't get the seeds right in the middle, you just open the door and then close the doors again, and put some right in the middle.
Well, it's got a lot of fail safes.
Mm-hmm. Oh fuck! I completely forgot about me water.
Gotta stay hydrated.
Right, I'm gonna go get some more black metal.
Okay.
There's that village, isn't there, by the sea that we haven't raided?
Yeah.
Oh, my loxies are fully grown. Look, 5 of them.
Oh, I'll do the cartography table and you can see what I've found.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
I've got 13 minutes left.
The hell? Where'd the knife go?
There's one at the base.
Yeah, but I just picked one up off this. And now it's disappeared. Well, that's annoying.
Hey, the chickens are leaving feathers around.
Really?
Yeah, I just picked up some feathers.
That's cool. Oh, I forgot to get the fucking knife.
To Do we need that fireplace still?
Which one?
There's one here by the bees.
Yeah. Because when the eggs go down, then they automatically get hatched.
But we also have this brazier. Look at this nice little brazier I got. Look. Have you seen it?
No. The blue one?
Come where I'm stood. No, over here. I got it from the trader. Because I think having the fireplace next to there is stopping one of the bees from being happy. Here it is. Oh my God, is there an egg under that?
Yeah.
If I bring that over.
Oh, I found the knife. It was sat under one of the locks.
Bees are so fucking needy. The bees need open space. Shut up.
7!
That brazier looked quite cool on top of that, like, wooden pillar you made.
Yeah? Do it.
That's
How much is it?
75 gold. It's nothing.
Really?
Mm.
Right, I'm gonna raid some gobbos.
Yeah, gobbo.
I hear them.
Apparently, when you kill Yagluth, you get furlings spawning in every biome, including the meadows.
And swarms.
Mm. Yeah, furlings spawn at night, every biome.
Oh shit! Wasn't paying attention.
Dead.
Yeah.
Clear them out. What killed you?
Just some fuelings. They're really fucking pracks. Oh shit! When you forget you're not wearing your cape.
Okay.
Fucking stupid. Why is my health not going up? Oh, it is now.
I picked up 8 scrap.
Oh god. Where the fuck did that come from?
Having to head back to work, Troy. But
Okay.
enjoy. I'll keep it on. Wait.
I mean, you're asking me what my opinion is, so I'm going to say I think you're approaching it wrong.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, you're asking me what my opinion is, so I'm going to say I think you're approaching it wrong.
Okay.
So I think the real answer to this is not, so it's not going to work, basically. Your hypothetical is flawed.
Okay.
Because you're injecting your judgment into the hypothetical.
Okay. How have I been? Good. I think it's like a busy stress, like lots of stress, but there's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of activity. It's a lot of stuff. It's always a lot of stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. What kind of stuff are you doing?
Well, there was an interesting, weird legal situation with my wife where they were, because of how complicated the international taxes are, Sweden thought that they were cooking her books, which is ridiculous. But I came here to Sweden to be with her for her court thing. Seems like it went really well. She finally got her passport back, so that's good. I have a thing going on with my parents where I kind of like made a deal with them that because my mom has Alzheimer's disease and it's starting to advance more noticeably, I made a deal with my dad that as long as they close all of their credit cards and they get rid of all their credit and they freeze their accounts, I'll pay all their debt off so that my dad can retire early. And then that's been a thing I've been kind of working on in the background. Obviously, as my platform has gotten larger and I've like expanded to more people, I'm trying to like manage like my streaming, my traveling and being on other podcasts, my responsibilities being like a political guy and like finding like what my bearing should be on all of that, especially about a red pill shit. I've had this huge thing recently about the medication stuff that I reached out to you. There's a million things. There's always a million things. I've hired a lot of new employees. I've got a podcast that I hope I'm finally starting. Just like a million things. Yeah.
Wow. So I am hearing a million things. So like personal stuff on several fronts, professional development stuff, but also like it sounds like you're not doing. I'm getting the sense that you're juggling different kinds of balls than you used to.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, more personal stuff now. I think maybe. Yeah.
Well, even I mean, so when I think about, let's say 3 years ago and the kind of work that you did, you were mostly streaming, and now it sounds like you're doing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, well, still trying to do mostly streaming. Yeah, trying. Yeah, like my audience makes fun of me for never streaming anymore, but like last month I streamed 170 hours, and that counts as no streaming for them. So, but like,
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
170 hours. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, I try, yeah. But they're used to me way back in the day. I would stream like 300 hours, and then they're probably more used to like 200 to 250, and then 170 or 160 from there seems like nothing. So yeah,
that's crazy, man.
Yeah, I think
so. And you mentioned something about you had some questions about like stimulant medication or something.
Yeah, basically, or maybe even more broadly, like mind, or maybe any type of, I guess, like enhancement medication, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, talk to me about it. You want to hop in, or you want to talk about other stuff?
Well, tell me how you're doing real quick. I'm curious because I see you popping up. I don't know if you've noticed this. I think I reached out to you. We have missed each other like 2 or 3 times in incredibly random places. I did a show with Charlie, the guy from Charisma on Command. Yeah. I think I was in his house like 4 hours after you left, and I had like no idea.
I remember. Yeah, I remember that coincidence. Yeah, I do think we're like popping up in similar places. Mm-hmm. I think I may be. I'm going out to SF, LA, and Las Vegas probably in a couple of weeks to do things that I'm sure you have done or will be doing or somehow affiliated with. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we do keep on. We're like ships passing in the night. But the cool thing is that we can connect about stuff.
Yeah. So your stuff is going good. Are you happy with how, I guess, where you guys are with all of your online stuff, with the expansion of your platform and talking to other people, or how's that been? How do you feel like that's been going?
Yeah, so I think it's been going well, but also it's like very confusing because I'm not quite sure what direction to go because we've got a lot of different options. And just trying to figure out like what do people need and what's the best way to deliver it. So we recently started a channel for parents. And so like that's something that is a very different demographic, but I was kind of thinking about it like, okay, like where do most of the problems in our community originate from? I think it originates from upbringing. So if you want to have the largest impact on mental health, I think helping people's upbringing and their sort of formative years as humans is probably like the biggest thing that you can do. And I think a lot of the problems that we see today are because the world that parents are growing up in is different, and the parenting skills that they have are no longer sufficient for like the digital age. So we're trying to do something there. We'll see how that goes. But that's not the place that we get the most traction.
Yeah. That's just what you said there. That's so interesting because I grew up as probably more online than most, but I kind of had a foot in both worlds just because of my age, right? I'm 34. Cell phones didn't really exist until like 2007 with the iPhone. Everything before then was like questionable. And even I have like a really big difficulty with my son, like trying to set like what's an appropriate boundary, how should he communicate with people online. It's really hard when children are communicating online because as an adult, if somebody messages me, like I know how to verify people's identities. Do you have social media? Where do you post or whatever? But when Nathan is communicating with, a 12-year-old, boy or girl, verifying all of that or making sure you know who's who is way more difficult. And I would expect that me being like the permanently online streamer, like I'll be able to do this no problem, but it's really challenging out there. And I am not envious of the parents that have, almost no tech background trying to sort through, their child being in these new crazy online environments that are so unprecedented. They have no, experience with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So I think that it's getting harder because technology, I think, is becoming more invasive. I think as platforms compete against each other for our attention spans, the one person that definitely ends up losing our attention is ourselves, right? So if like TikTok and YouTube and Twitch, if everyone's competing for us, Instagram, and as they get better at competing against each other, like the one person who loses time is us. And so I think that there's just a lot of work there to be done, and we'll see kind of how that goes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well,
yeah,
stimulus.
So let's talk about. Yeah. So what's going on, man?
So I'll do from a personal perspective first. And actually, maybe even you can help me sort this like personal thing. I'm curious how you decide this. I have a really hard time in my life sorting out what is like an appropriate like where do you draw lines on a spectrum for some things? So for instance, maybe for a relationship, right? Like the best partner would be a partner that had all the same hobbies, similar communication styles, similar age, like all these things. But in the real world, we kind of have to like make some compromises. You're not gonna have like the most 100% perfect person. Or when it comes to like I think for my free time, sometimes I look at the time that I have and I'm thinking like I always feel like I could be doing so much more. Like I'll wake up and maybe I'm in bed on my phone for 30 minutes. Maybe it's usually like Reddit or thank God I don't have TikTok. Maybe it's like sitting in my chair and like reading chat instead of like going to the gym immediately. Like I look at all of these little points in the day where I'm losing time. And I know as like an online person, there's a million other things you can do. What do you think is like, at what point do you draw an appropriate boundary where you're like, you should be pushing yourself 100% or 50% or 80%? Do you have any, like, how would you even go about figuring that out, I guess? Yeah, go ahead. I'm curious.
Yeah. So I would, so personally, not personally, but personally and professionally, I think that the premise is flawed. So when you kind of said that there's like this perfect partner who has A, B, C, D, like that's how you find the perfect relationship. I don't think that's actually what constitutes a perfect relationship.
Okay.
So a perfect relationship isn't about finding 100%. It's about the interactions that you have. You don't need the same communication style. You need investment and reciprocity is usually, or some degree of balance,
sure,
right? Which you could say that's what's on the 100%. But I think in order to answer this question, okay, I could be doing so much more, right? Like that's your question. Like, how do you decide how much to push yourself and how much to and I would start with like, why do you need to do more?
From a socially responsible point of view, I feel like I make a ton of money now and I have a ton of influence. And the only reason why I've gotten to where I'm at is because people that had the means to do so invested a lot in society prior to me, whether you're talking about scientific researchers, whether you're talking about really inspirational teachers, whether you're talking about revolutionary fighters, George Washington, whoever, like all of these figures have invested into kind of like mankind because of the unique gifts and talents and opportunities they've had. And I feel like I kind of owe it to pay it forward. So on a societal level, I feel like that obligation exists with everybody to some extent. And then from a personal development level, I just see that like, let's say that I spend like an hour on Reddit every day, right? I think I could very easily cut out 30 minutes and like practice guitar. And if I look at where I'm at 1 year, like retrospectively, my life is a million times better. I know that it's like a way better, like I could probably uninstall Reddit from my phone and my life would probably be better for it. You know, even if my day-to-day instant dopamine hits aren't there, the fulfillment I'll feel at the end of the year is just going to be better. And I have a hard time not like reductively applying that same thought process to every single area of my life. Like I remember there was 1 week where, well, it was just now, we'll get into the medication they want to say, these stimulants, where I would wake up at like 9 a.m. and like my goal was to be like on the treadmill in the gym at 9:05. Okay, I wanted to wake up, like throw my pants and everything on, grab my phone so that I could check my emails, but I'm only doing that like on the treadmill. And when I started to live days like this, I'm like, holy shit, like I'll have like gym and like 2 errands done by like 11:30 a.m. And I'm like, this is way better. But then obviously, yeah, I mean, you can't burn yourself into the ground. So I don't know, like what is like the appropriate way to draw lines there or something. That's how I view it, I guess. Sorry, that was a longer answer, but yeah.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I think the appropriate way to draw lines has to do with what's important to you, right? So I think like once again, I mean, I'm all for being more efficient, but and you talk about these like big people, right, who have made big contributions, and I mean, how much do you owe the world?
As much as you can give, I would say, I would think so, but
Why?
I feel like the way that like humanity kind of works, the way that people work is there is something about us that's greater than the sum of our parts. Like if you were to use a really crude calculation of like how much happiness can one person produce, maybe it's like 10 units. But if you take 2 people and you put them together they might be able to make 300 units. That society, civilization, our institutions, all of this collective work kind of like builds on itself to create something that's so much more than the sum of its parts. And in order for that to work going forward, I think it kind of requires people to, like rise to a calling or pursue certain gifts that they have in certain ways to act as a better society, where people run, at least, I would say.
Okay. How do you feel when you do 2 errands and you go to gym by 11:30?
You're really good, obviously, yeah.
Really good in what way? What part of you feels good?
What part of me? My brain? I mean, I feel very productive. Like I have done something that I know is good for me. I've done something that I know how to do like work-wise. I took a lot of time in the day. I just feel like I'm very effectively allocating my time, and that feels really good. Like ineffectively allocating my time feels really bad. Like so bad that I can lose it. Yeah, go ahead.
What feels bad about it?
Man, I don't know. Like I'm sure people can vibe with this. If you wake up at 9 and you're on your phone in bed until like 11, and then you get out of bed, it feels like you've wasted like there's 2 hours of my day that I could have done bettering myself, the people around me, financially. There's a million better things I could have done with my time. I did nothing, and now that time is just wasted. And it feels, if I say inefficient, it sounds robotic, but I just feel like there's so many other better things I could do with my time. I would be like a better person for it.
How do you feel about yourself for wasting time?
You're bad, stupid, like dumb. Like I know I'm smart enough to know that there's a stupid use of my time. You're sitting here like on my phone, like an idiot. That's not me, but like I do feel that way, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Disappointing, I guess. That I know I can do better.
So okay. Here's you wasting time. Okay. Here's you reacting to you wasting time. So this person is disappointed.
Yeah.
What do you think about this dyad, this interaction between you and yourself?
Like the distance from my cognition to my metacognition, or is that like the
yeah? Like what do you think about the relationship between your cognition and your metacognition? Because there's a relationship there, right?
I mean, sometimes the tether is very short, and sometimes it's very very far away. This has been something that I've been struggling with that kind of leads us into the I guess like the ADHD and the medication talk. So I tried stimulants now for about 2 weeks after getting a diagnosis, and I feel like these 2 things have like become one basically. To where
what does that mean?
As in like before I might wake up and it's like I should go to bed and I'll kind of check Reddit and I see what's going on and try to figure blah blah blah. Like that's kind of like how it's going. I know I should probably get out of bed. Whereas now like if I'm throughout the day if I need to do something, it's like I need to do this and then I go and I do that because I know I need to do it. And it's like obvious, like I need to do this, let's go do it. Rather than like sitting down during my period doing a bunch of other random stuff. Like I can think I need to do something and go do something. So I feel like those 2 things have shrunk significantly. But
okay, so it seems like you were further able to meet your goals since you started stimulant medication.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's just offer just a couple of quick ground rules, boundary setting.
Sure.
So I'm not going to dispense medical advice, and let's just be clear on what that is. So I think it's completely fine to have a conversation, like an existential or philosophical conversation about performance enhancement, stimulants, what do we want to do in life, etc. What usually medical advice around stimulants looks like involves a thorough diagnostic process, right? So I'll ask you 1,000 questions that I'm not going to ask you today, and then as well as like discussing different treatment options, the process of informed consent. These are the things that constitute the practice of medicine and developing a treatment plan. So I'm happy to share. I've had these conversations with mentees of mine because people are wondering, right? Like this is a very common conversation to have. So I think it's totally fine. But just so we're on the same page, I'm not going to be diagnosing you or treating you with anything or saying you should or should not take stimulants because in order for me to say that, I have to know medically diagnostic information.
Yeah.
Are we clear on that?
Yeah. I make a joke, but being very serious, I 100% understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Destiny, I think. Okay, so you feel good about yourself after you have started taking stimulants because you're more productive?
Well, hold on. That was a much larger statement. I feel good when I can do the things that I need to do immediately. Because good about myself in a broader sense, I guess that's kind of like the dilemma. Or that was for a while. That was like the issue. Yeah.
So in what ways do you not feel good about yourself? Right?
So,
okay. So you started stimulant medication so you could get more stuff done, and it seems like it sounds like you went through a very legitimate process of seeing a medical professional, arriving at a reasonable diagnosis and a reasonable treatment plan that includes stimulants. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and why did you do that?
So
What was your motivation?
yeah, I want to say, like, I think it was 6 years ago, my son had major issues in the classroom, like such that we went through so many different, I think they're called IEPs for classrooms. We had him like crawling through resistance tunnels to burn energy. We wondered if he had ASD. We were trying to figure out what was going on. Eventually, we kind of settled on ADHD, and then we tried to manage that a few ways. And then I had to do a lot of reading about drugs because I don't want to say toxically masculine, but I grew up very conservative. I had like 4 ibuprofen in my life. I'm not like a pill guy at all. And the idea of having my Jesus, what would he been like? 7-year-old son, like on amphetamines is like Jesus, huh? That's, or methadone or method, whatever the other one is called. That was a big deal to me. So I did a whole bunch of reading, a whole bunch of research, and in the course of all of that reading and research, because I kind of wanted to know, like, is like, I don't want to say I didn't believe that ADHD was a real thing, but I'm like a big, again, I grew up conservative. I'm a big, like, if you want to do it, get it done. It's all about you. Forget excuses or anything else. I started to see a whole bunch of things crop up when I was doing research that I didn't know were ADHD typical behaviors. And then when I went back and I mapped them onto my life, I saw that I had a lot of exceptional. So one thing was that the concept of starting a project with a whole bunch of focus, pouring an inordinate amount of time into it, and then never being able to pick up a project again. I didn't know that was like typical of ADHD people. That's one thing. The idea of not being able to manage homework regardless of academic proficiency. For I think 3 or 4 years, I think in grade school, I was the only kid in my class that had to have my assignment notebook signed off on by my teachers and my parents. I couldn't do it. I remember times growing up where I would cry doing homework. I just didn't want to do it. It was so horrible. I remember behaviors relating to, the addictiveness that ADHD people have with regular dopamine scheduled things like video games. Some people call it hyperfocus, but basically if you can find something with a common reward system, you can do it 16 hours a day, stuff like that. I was a pro StarCraft 2 player. I did that. I started to see a bunch of these things crop up, and then just the general issue with executive dysfunction. And a lot of these things I didn't really associate with ADHD. I thought ADHD was like you're hyper and you're running around everywhere. And I wasn't. I sat at a computer and I played computer games. But fast forward from all that, I had my son, started medications, been really good for him, thankfully. Now, as my future has continued, there was I would never advocate for anybody to do this ever, and I don't advocate, illegal drugs and blah, 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 but I had the opportunity to try a stimulant medication from a friend, and, they made a joke like, oh yeah, you're gonna take this, you're gonna be bouncing up and down the walls, you're gonna be crazy, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, fuck it, and I tried a stimulant medication for the first time in my life, I think it was like about a year ago, and it was the calmest, chillest, most focused, relaxed day I think I'd ever had in my life, and I was just super, like, I could choose to do something, I could whatever, and then fast forward like 7 or 8 months later, I had a lot of conversations with friends, I finally got a formal diagnosis, and then I'm like, okay, well, let's try medication, and let's see how my life changes, and if this is something I want for the better or not, I guess. Sorry, I was going to try to be weird version of that, but yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay.
And so what's your hang up? So you started the medication. It sounds like it allows you to do what you set it out to do. So where's the rub?
Yeah, I guess the hang up is before I started it. So I got the diagnosis and then I got the prescription, and then for like 7 days, my issue is always that when it comes to issues of the mind, I'm thinking like, why not just be less of a lazy piece of shit? That's what I feel like. So like when I get out of bed, there's not a guy there that's like punching me to stay in bed and to be lazy. There's not a guy like holding a gun to my hand saying, leave your fucking phone for 3 hours. Like I can just choose not to do it. And there are days where if I have like exceptional, mental tenacity, exceptional focus, like fuck, I am gonna do all this shit. I've done it before. Right? I don't know why I can't do it every day. So then it feels at some point like, is this a cop out to be like, I'm neurodivergent, I'm like executively stupid, and I'm gonna take like a fucking pill and I'm gonna pop this and like, oh cool, it fixed all my problems. Like does that say something I guess about my character? Is that
When you say does that say something about your character, what do you think?
I mean intuitively, yeah.
What does it say about your character?
That you need some sort of exogenous or external, like physical motivator to do something that you should be able to do on your own. This is something you should be able to motivate yourself on your own. And the fact that you require something external, especially when it comes to neurotransmitters, is like something's broken with you. And I know it's broken, it's something you're not willing to fix, you're not willing to put the time or effort into fixing it.
Okay. And how do you feel about yourself for not putting in the... Do you think it's theoretically possible for you to achieve what you want without stimulants?
I think so. Anytime I have dilemmas like this, I solicit, I ask my fans, I'm like, what do you guys do? I'm curious what your thoughts are. So I got a lot of feedback. One thought that stuck with me a lot is a person emailed me and they said, you've been talking about like overcoming your ADHD and all this for like 5 years. Basically ever since Nathan was diagnosed. And then, look back at your life in 5 years, did you do it? And it's like, no, not at all. And it's like, if I could have lived the last 5 years of my life on stimulants, even if I do take the hit to my moral character because I'm not, working as hard myself, every single other part of my life improves tenfold. I'd be healthier because I'd be going to the gym more often. I'd be probably eating better. I would be more focused on my research, my streams. I'd be better debater. I'd be better advocate for my ideas. I'd be managing extra time better for like hobbies or extracurriculars, like practicing an instrument, rock climbing, whatever the fuck. That even if it was the case that at the end of those 5 years, maybe my moral character slightly diminished, the gains that I would make in every other part of my life would be so appreciable. It wouldn't even matter. I wouldn't be thinking about that.
So what's the problem?
Well, I mean, when I first messaged you, I was like spiraling hard. But now I've got a lot of emails, I thought about it a lot, and I kind of, I thought about it more, and I think I feel pretty good. But it is a very weird feeling, like standing in line at a pharmacy or waking up and taking a pill. Like, that's just not the type of person I guess I've ever been in my entire life. I also feel like a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just think?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, got a question for you. What do you think is... So what I'm hearing is that, on paper, stimulants are a good idea.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
And in actuality, they may be a good idea for you. I'm hearing that you judge yourself quite harshly for needing them, utilizing them, taking the shortcut. Fair?
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah, that's true.
Where do you think is the origin of that judgment?
Where's the origin of that judgment? Is the origin of the judgment, like, are you asking, like, why I feel like I need them, or why I would judge myself for taking them?
The latter.
The latter.
The former is important too, but let's start with the latter.
Sure. Because I feel like, maybe I need to go deeper, but like, it feels like I'm shortcutting a process that I should be able to work through.
And where... So that, there's a value judgment inherent in that, right? That taking the hard way is superior to taking the easy way. That you should be able to do this.
Yeah.
You should be able to do this better.
Sure. And the next is, it's a comparison of what everybody else around me is like, essentially. My understanding is most people can decide to do something and do something, if that's not a huge issue for a lot of these people, whereas I seem to struggle with it sometimes essentially. So I should be able to be on my own.
And what I'm hearing from you is like, okay, so like between this tension, right? So on the one hand, you can do it the hard way, which is like meditate and do whatever else. We can talk about that in a second. Like you can kind of overcome your ADHD as if it's an obstacle. And there's data to suggest, and I don't know if this is kind of what you found, but that you can do that, right? There are outcomes from things like psychotherapy or equivalent to stimulant medication. We can talk about that data in a second. But and so there's a tension between kind of taking this shortcut, and then I almost hear you like making justifications to yourself, right? That like, okay, like objectively, if I do this, so I've been sticking around for 5 years, now I'm kind of done. Objectively, like I could have done so much more. Now that I'm on it, I can accomplish so much more. Why do I need to accomplish so much more? Because of this like complicated, or maybe not complicated, because of this needy worldview about like social good and paying it forward and existing for the benefit of humanity and all this kind of stuff, right? So there's like all these like big reasons for Steven to take stimulants. And those big reasons fight against, well, I should be able to do it without it. And what I'm hearing you ask is, how do I find the balance between these two things? When is it a cop-out? When is it not a cop-out? When is it the right move? When is it the wrong move? And so you're stuck between these two things.
Yeah, from like a, I guess from like a normative ethics point of view, it's like there's like some virtues that I think are worth aspiring to, but then there's like some like consequential attitudes that are undeniable. So like for instance, if I could take a pill right now and have the ideal flawless perfect body composition, blood levels and everything, like I feel like I shouldn't take that pill. But at some point you do so much math where it's like, well, you know, or you do so much utilitarian calculus, you're like, well, I probably should do this. It wouldn't make sense not to. Like I almost wonder if I got diagnosed as like a type 1 or type 2 diabetic, would I think that like, well, do I really need insulin, or can I just do like a keto diet and never eat anything on the glycemic index is above like a 10 ever and I'll be okay? Yeah, it's that kind of thing, I guess. It's balancing out like that virtue with the, yeah, I guess with the consequentialist idea, yeah.
And do you prefer if I call you Steve, Steven, Destiny? What do you prefer?
Steven's good.
Okay. So Steven, I think, I know it sounds kind of weird, but I mean, you're asking me what my opinion is. So I'm going to say I think you're approaching it wrong.
Okay.
So I think the real answer to this is not, so it's not going to work, basically. So you're kind of fighting like an intellectual, I'm going to call it intellectual, it's not quite intellectual, but you're fighting a battle and trying to figure out what the right answer is.
Sure.
I don't think that's what works well. I think what works really well is understanding your relationship with yourself, understanding the origins of the different pieces, and then even resolving some of the fuel behind your beliefs. So you can have two beliefs that can butt heads, and then you can logically try to decide which one is right. But what I find is far, far, far more effective, and this is like more of a personal value system, is to understand like the way that you relate to things. So I'm going to just toss out a couple of things, okay?
Okay.
The first is there's this interesting concept which I loved learning about and love teaching about, even though I'm not very good at it, is the psychodynamics of psychopharmacology. So the psychodynamics is kind of like psychodynamic psychotherapy is like sort of based on psychoanalysis. So it kind of has this idea that like we have all these like associations and meanings and interpretations and the way that we relate to different stimuli in our environment. We can dig into that, and there's like a whole way to understand. Okay, like my mom didn't hug me. And what does that mean to me? And how does that have a subconscious impact? All that crap that we sort of think of is like Freudian psychoanalysis. All that sort of stuff is like the way that we relate to things. There's a whole rich exploration of the way that we relate to taking a pill. So I think this, I don't know if you're doing psychotherapy, but I think sort of like doing psychotherapy around this can be very helpful for people with ADHD. Like, what does it mean to you to take a medication?
Okay.
Because the answer is not should you take one objectively or not objectively. That's part of your treatment plan, and you and your provider will decide based on evidence-based outcomes and all that kind of stuff. But like, what does it mean to you to take this pill? That's a very important exploration. And I think that's ultimately what's going to fix the problem. It's not like the cookie can crumble either way, right? Because you can make a good logical argument either way. So it's not like there's a right answer or wrong answer. Both of them are justifiable courses. The real issue, the real rub, the tension that I'm seeing in you and the struggle that I'm seeing has nothing to do with the right answer or the wrong answer. It has to do, if you really want to fix it, you have to understand your relationship to the thing. Now, this is where things get so far.
Yeah.
This is where things get interesting. So let's just talk a little bit about outcomes, stimulants, and all that kind of stuff. So it sounds like you did a lot of research on your kid, or not your kid, but kids with ADHD. And what did you discover?
Well, now I'm a little bit worried because maybe I was looking at the wrong stuff. For most of the, well, I was gonna say for most of the ADHD stuff, I had a really hard time finding meditation or other social interventions in larger studies showing to have positive outcomes similar to medication. The only reason why I finally broke down and got the diagnosis for ADHD is because it felt like stimulant-based medication was like some of the only stuff that showed really good outcomes related to people that were like super big into the ADHD thing. But I might have missed that somehow. I might have, yeah. Okay, we're gonna get into the phrase broke down in a second, but Gotcha.
so let's just understand a couple things about stimulant medication, okay?
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize this. So the first thing is that if you give a child a stimulant, it has very, very good outcomes, generally speaking, for adults.
Okay.
So this is what's really kind of confusing. So let's just illustrate with one example. So some people think that since stimulants are abusable, and we also know that exposing developing brains to substances of abuse will increase the risk of addiction as they develop.
Okay.
So when I have my nucleus accumbens and my dopamine reward circuitry that is developing, and I give it highly dopaminergic stuff, it wires in a different way to where I'm sensitive to substances in the future. So we actually have decent evidence that marijuana is actually a gateway drug. Like that is not, it's not some propaganda or anything. I mean, there may be propaganda around it, but basically we know that if you start using marijuana in your teenage years, you are more likely to develop a neurochemistry that is sensitive to other dopaminergic or addictive substances.
Okay.
So people were worried, right? Because we've got this pile of evidence. And if you give a 7-year-old, oh my God, an amphetamine that is dopaminergic, will it increase his risk of addiction? The answer is almost certainly not. And this confuses the hell out of all kinds of people because we were like, wait a second, because this stuff is highly dopaminergic. What we actually find is when you give a child with ADHD a stimulant, their risk of addiction goes down over the course of their life.
Just because of a change of behavior, or?
Great question. So the answer is complicated. The first thing is to understand what a stimulant does, okay? So a stimulant medication works on the frontal lobes of our brain. So the part of our brain that it actually stimulates is the brakes. So the ability of our brain to restrain other parts of our brain. So if we look at what predisposes people to addiction, it's things like emotional dysregulation, impulsivity. These are both big risk factors for addiction. So when you strengthen the brain and you are no longer as impulsive and you can regulate your emotions, you become less vulnerable to the benefit of substances. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this was in a kind of roundabout way. For some of the, I'll stay on this topic in particular. One of the emails I got was it was an interesting question of like, what do you think damages your brain more in the long run? Having these, amphetamines that are causing these dopaminergic effects in your brain. Wait, say that word again? Dopaminergic effects in your brain. Do you think that hurts your brain more than playing video games and watching porn for 18 hours a day for years and years and years? And if one amphetamine can help you not engage in all the other horrible behavior, it might be the case that your brain putting the brakes on some forms of like dopamine-seeking behavior is actually more beneficial in the long run for addictive behavior than, which seems paradoxical.
But yeah, so I think the spirit is spot on, but I think there are a couple of important nuances.
Sure,
specifically with the general principle is true, and that'll apply to everything else I'm about to say. But specifically with the case of stimulants, there's some parts of our brain that are vulnerable to addiction. And what the stimulant medication does is buffer those parts of the brain. Right? So like, and this is what, and now we get to so the first thing is that it's interesting because basically several studies have shown that there is certainly not a increased risk of addiction with stimulants. The jury's still out on whether there's a no risk or it's like neutral or it's beneficial, and there's complicated things that get into that, which we're going to get into in a second. But the key thing to understand is that's number one. here's the other big thing about stimulant medication in kids. Now, I think, so this is going to sound kind of weird, I think that stimulant medication for kids is not neurodevelopmentally good or healthy, okay? This is going to sound kind of weird. Because if we just look at developing brains, we basically know that any kind of psychoactive substance does not really help. Like, it doesn't help the developing brain. That's just something that we know. Whether it's caffeine, whether it's nicotine, alcohol, opiates, whatever. So then, but if we look at outcomes of kids with ADHD who get medicated, the outcomes are good. And in fact, there are studies that show that early use of ADHD medication with higher doses leads to better outcomes as an adult. Okay, like we're talking like 7, 8 years. We can look at a population of like 12 to 15-year-olds, and then look at them 8 years later, and basically like people who got a lot of stimulants early on did better. There's some confounding factors there because those people may have had a more severe illness and other things like that. But I think this is where a lot of people misunderstand one key point, which I think could be relevant to you. So which is that growing up with untreated ADHD is traumatic. So if you look at populations of people who have depression and ADHD, okay, and then you ask if you got diagnosed with depression first, what is the likelihood that you will get diagnosed with ADHD later? It is 3%.
Okay.
If you get diagnosed with ADHD first, what is the likelihood you get diagnosed with depression later in life? 70%. There is a very clear causative impact. And this is, by the way, what we see with you, right? So you're like you beat yourself up and all this self-judgment of, we come down to it's comparison. Like, where does that thought come from? It's because when you were in 2nd grade, you understood that your IQ was the same as everybody else's. But for the life of you, you could just not understand why you could never do homework. Sure. I mean, if you think about even what you said, the memories that you have are so profound because you recall them to this day. You were the only fucking kid in the class who had to have your homework get signed off by your parents and your teacher. And so what happens to that child? The child starts judging themselves very harshly. Why are you so stupid? Why can't you do what other people can do? This is a sign of your weakness. You have this fundamental brokenness. Yeah. Very common.
This was when I was doing research for Nathan, this was the thing that ultimately pushed me over on to do the drugs. I feel like my obligation as a parent is to make sure that his like growing years and everything in grade school are, because he's already in a split parent household, which has a whole bunch of negative things associated with it. So I could tell him, go to school, fight through this and do that, but then to do that on top of everything else, I don't want to be in a situation where my kid is like 18, he either doesn't qualify for college or he's high school. He's like, Dad, why the fuck did you just give me like stimulants when I was in 2nd grade and then you deal with whatever negative things? Now you like ruined my whole life because of some weird feeling you get over medication. So yeah, that was definitely the thing that pushed me in that direction.
Yeah, and so like I think the key thing that you gotta understand is when I see this conflict, I don't see actually like an intellectual conflict. I see like an emotional self-judgment fueled conflict. And I think the solution to this is not like, is it good or is it bad? It's to actually heal whatever the hurt is that you had with growing up with undiagnosed ADHD and what that's meant for your life. Because like that's the thing. And even the way that you talk about your child's regrets are like your regrets.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right? Right? So like, I mean, it's like 1-to-1 because what caused you to change your mind? You were like, well, someone said 5 years ago if you had started, where would you have been now? Yeah. So now we get to another problem, which is regret. And this is where like now if we really want to go off the rails, like I've seen this a lot, like why are you trying so hard? I mean, sure, you can construct this whatever social goodness kind of stuff, and like that's good stuff. I'm not saying it isn't, I do that stuff too for social good and all that jazz. But I think that there's a fuel here that has nothing to do with the social good. The fuel has to, let me know if I'm wrong here, but I think like this regret in the sense of, I get this pressure from you about time. Like, Steven, are you afraid of death?
I mean, sometimes when I'm driving, but no, I don't think, not in general, no, I don't think so.
Do you feel like you've regretted or wasted a part of your life?
I think, I'm trying to think, usually what I'll do, just a quick thing, I'll have like a feeling and then I try to intellectualize it and then I try to slowly, if I can think about a thing a little bit differently, the feeling changes over time essentially, like a bastardized version of CBT, I guess. But the way that I try to do my life is, as long as I feel like I'm on a good road and I feel like I'm happy with myself right now and the road that I'm heading on, I try to view my life as having no regrets because any particular bad thing that might have happened might have been a contributing factor to who I am now, so I do it like pretty favorably. So I might have like things that were, I'll say, suboptimal relating to upbringing or early in my life, but like I do it as all kind of like these are all part of the stepping stones to who I am now, where I'm going. I feel really good about those two things, who I am and where I'm going, so yeah.
So that is both really good and really problematic.
Okay.
So I think it's very, very adaptive and it's exactly what you should be doing, right? You positively, cognitively reframed and all that stuff. You bastardized internal version of CBT, call it whatever you want to. But you're essentially taking your intellect and you're molding your emotions with it. But I think there is more to be gained from understanding where those emotions come from in the first place. So from an adaptive standpoint or functional standpoint, it makes perfect sense that what you want to do is like, those emotions are negative. Let's cognitively reframe, adapt, grow, work with this negative regret, try to get rid of this negative regret. But I think the next step, and this is kind of where I see you, and this is why I think you're running into trouble, because I think your tactic won't work for these problems, is my sense. So like you can logic your way to a functional life where you get up every day, you're optimizing things, you're progressing, you're doing well, right? And this is where like when I've worked with people in the past, I don't think this is a problem. I mean, there may be psychological problems related to trauma growing up with ADHD, but that's between you and your provider and your therapist and all that good stuff. We can talk a little bit more about what that looks like in non-pharmacological approaches if you want to.
Sure.
But I mean, I think this sounds to me like a spiritual crisis more than anything else. Like that's what it feels like. And these are like bigger, deeper questions of, sure, you can justify, which is what you always end up doing, right? It's like you can justify this as, okay, like this was part of my path and it's made me who I am, and like I'm doing okay in life, so like I should not regret the past. But what I don't actually hear you doing is metabolizing the regret. I don't hear you getting to the source of that and trying to figure out and I think there's like a tier above this, which is, there may be some problems to me saying that, but which is like understanding that you do regret and that it is okay to regret and that you can still be happy with what you've accomplished. But I think that's like very hard for you because of like that self-judgment of I should have been perfect.
I understand what you're saying. The spiritual crisis was definitely like probably a year and a half ago, I think, is when I was trying to think of like, do I want to just sit online and kind of, move sideways, do decently, or do I want to be more aggressive with my career? And then that's when I kind of thought more about like obligations to society and all that. And I feel like, I mean, I'll say that was spiritually solved, but obviously there's still other issues I'm trying to figure out, like medication, right? And that was why in the past year and a half of my career I've been way more aggressive in terms of doing other things. I do agree with you about what you're saying. You call it metabolizing your regret, but I'm trying to say in other words what you're saying so we can make sure I understand. I think there's a negative thing that people will do where, say you have an abusive parent, where somebody will say something like, actually that abuse was good for me, and my life is so much better because of it. And in a way that might be better than walking through life being completely traumatized by it, but like the next level would be saying, well, actually that abuse was really bad for me, but I understand that, I made peace with it, and I've overcome it, and I'm moving in a forward direction. I feel like for the most part, like there are definitely things in my life, when I say I have no regret, I guess we could dig a little bit more into that. Obviously there are things that have not gone as I would have liked it, and there are things that kind of stuck in terms of my upbringing, but like I made peace with those things. I don't think that I don't let them drag me down. Obviously if I could have chosen different types of things in my upbringing, I would absolutely like change the way that some things are, but I think everything's going okay now, so I don't let those like weigh on me, I guess. It's not like I've, go ahead.
Yeah, so you know, like even in your language, I think there's like, and this is what I think is really where there's opportunity for progress. Is like actually has nothing to do with whether you should take stimulant medication or not.
Sure.
This is really a fantastic opportunity for you to understand the different currents within yourself, right? So what I get the sense that you're focused on is when you have conflicting currents, you have a pretty rigorous process of like getting all the troops in line, right? So like and that's good. I mean, you're good at that. You're gifted at that. It's a useful thing to do. It's adaptive. It's cognitive reframing. It's what we try to do in CBT. But there's like you're spot on that there's another layer of this, which is to ask yourself like, why do I feel this way in the first place?
Okay.
Right? Why like what is the origin of this judgment? Because imagine if you could get rid of the judgment entirely, not get it in line, but you can understand that. And this is what I think happens: is you can cognitively reframe. But basically, if you look at sort of this yogic model of the mind, what happens is when we have negative emotional experiences, those emotions get stored up, and they sit in our subconscious mind or our unconscious mind as something called a samskar, and that those emotions will trigger and activate in current circumstances. And so, in a situation like yours, what I'm hearing is an echo of the comparisons that you used to make in this idea that you should be able to do what other people are able to do. That is like a core part in CBT. We may call it something like a core belief, right? And so as long as you have that piece, you really need to understand like, why do I think that way about myself? Because if you sort of think about it like logically, right? I mean, everyone's unique. Everyone, and I know you do this process. This is the part that you're good at, right? Everyone's unique. Like you can't always make comparisons, and everyone has advantages and disadvantages. We get a certain amount of stat points to distribute on our character sheet, and that's how it is. I took the ADHD thing for an additional feat at level 1, and that's just how it works. And I got debating proficiency, whatever, right? So there's whatever breakdown that you have, which you can kind of logically understand. But I think now the question is like, you know, why do you feel this way about yourself? Why is your worldview such that like you should be able to do it without it? Right? And that I think will go back. That I think will go back to like if you really pay attention to your early experiences in childhood, which by the way, it's another thing that I just connected the dots on. I was really confused the first time we talked because you play games while you're debating with people, right?
Well, I haven't for the past 2 weeks while I've been on amphetamines, but yeah, I know what you're saying. I used to a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is not a coincidence that you've stopped. So there's
Yeah,
good
no,
evidence
not at all, yeah.
there's good evidence that doing a cognitively distracting rote task allows people with ADHD to focus. So when I'm doing group psychotherapy with people with ADHD, I will oftentimes, what I learned at one of the hospitals I worked at is knitting, that if they do some kind of rote or even cognitively mildly engaging task, it actually helps them focus because they have like too much kind of mental energy and like dispersing some of it allows them to actually focus.
Yeah.
This is also why people with ADHD sometimes meditate better with their eyes open.
Okay.
So you need some kind of stimulation, which is something that's interesting. And also, if you started stimulant medication, it would make sense.
Yeah, it all
that
tracks,
you no
yeah.
longer need. Yeah. So where are you right now? What are you thinking? Thoughts, questions?
I'm writing down like big concepts, I guess, to keep track of. The first question of like, what does it mean to take a pill? I think that's a good. I think there's a lot of room for me to think about and explore how I feel about that because all of my feelings related to that are negative, and most of them are, I think, really stupid. They're rooted in stupid things. I know that looking at it intellectually. And then the why did I write this down? You're talking about judgment in big caps. Oh, why do I judge myself? I guess, or I guess like what standard do I judge myself? I mean, I feel like judgment is probably a necessary part of. Or you were going to say something. So
No. Yeah, you know, I think you're okay. So let's talk about the pills for a second. So
Okay.
why do people have stupid beliefs, Stephen?
For all sorts of different reasons. I mean, they could be maladaptive. It could be
Sure.
they learned it from other.
No, but I mean, like, why do people develop stupid? Like, so you said, okay, I have all kinds of attitudes towards medication that are stupid. Then why do you have that attitude? Where does that attitude come from?
It's probably an inherited belief that's largely unexamined because it doesn't come up much in daily life, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's one way to put it. I would chalk it up to an experience, which could be an what you call an inherited
Yeah,
belief.
my dad and my grandpa were like, I don't believe in medicine, I don't
Right.
care about this, and then now I'm like, if I get a headache, I don't like to take ibuprofen, which is stupid, but it doesn't come up that much, so I don't examine it that much.
Yeah, so I don't think it's an inherited belief. I think it's a learning, is what I would call it.
Oh, sure.
So
When I say inherited, I mean like you learn it, but you're right. Yeah, learn is a better word.
Right. So you had some experience early on in life where like maybe you were sick and like the doctor recommended that you take ibuprofen and you were really hurting and you were like, Dad, should I take the ibuprofen? He's like, ibuprofen is for sissies. You don't take ibuprofen, and then you felt guilty or bad because you really wanted it and the doctor said, but you didn't want to be weak, right? And then like that whole thing starts. I mean, I have no idea if that's actually what happened, but that's an example.
Okay,
So I think one thing to understand anytime you examine your stupid beliefs is you can do the cognitive reframing stuff. But I found it to be very, very helpful to understand the origins of your experience and why that became a truth for you and how that became a truth for you. Because at some point it was learned. That's why you believe it, right? Second thing about judgment is I think exploring the origins of your self-judgment are very important.
Okay.
And so if you really want to, because right now what's happening is you have a clash between like a self-judgment and a logic.
Okay.
Right?
Can I give you my idea about judgment first so we're using the same words?
Yeah.
So I feel like judgment is a necessary part of your self-analysis because it allows you to more closely align yourself with whatever your idealized version of yourself is. So for instance, let's say that I think I should be somebody that is truthful to my friends around me, and then let's say that in the past I lied to somebody, then I would want to judge myself as failing to meet those types of expectations that I would have for a more idealized version of myself. That would be what I would consider like a judgment, not necessarily like,
Sure.
yeah, but I just want to make sure you're using the word in some way. So yeah, you tell me that, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, so I think the problem is that the direction of the judgment and the idealized, what the target is, it can be based on bad stuff.
Okay.
Right, so you're right that judgment is a self-correcting. We have this part of our brain that does something called counterfactual thinking, which is, and it's kind of a weird term, but when we make a mistake, there is a factual representation of what happened. And we have a part of our brain that thinks in a counterfactual way. So you can think about it as hypothetical, but our brain goes back and rewrites history outside of the facts. And that's one of the ways that we learn from our mistakes and correct our behavior. So you're right that I think judgment is, it's a judgment that you place that has the direction towards an idealized self. But the problem is that that idealized self and that judgment can come from unhealthy places to begin with.
Yeah, definitely agree.
So what I'm saying is that's what needs to be examined.
Okay. Then I guess the question would be like, is the ideal that you're aspiring to unhealthy to some extent? I feel like that's what the
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we get to the big problem of like I think like, so I think you come up with a very intellectually sound, dharmic, ethical, utilitarian approach to what you want to do with your life. But that's all coming from up here, and what I'm really hearing you need to do is integrate that with like the other parts of your mind.
Yeah, of course.
Right, because I think that's where you're going to find your balance. Because right now there's a conflict, which means that one side is going to win and one side is going to lose.
Or, well, ideally, one side is integrated into the other. If you run into a huge incongruence with the mind and the feeling, at some point you have to examine why and then bring one of them into alignment with the other at some point, right? Hopefully.
Yeah, so I think in that integration process, one piece is going to lose.
Okay. I disagree. Or let's talk about that actually. Yeah, because I feel like I don't agree with that 100%. I'll give an example. You can talk me through why you think that. I'm curious. So let's say that let's say that I feel like I should shoot. I don't want to use well, no, we'll say negative thing. Okay. Let's say that I want to play video games for 16 hours a day, but like intellectually I know that it's probably not healthy to play video games for 16 hours a day. But I really like playing video games. So at some point, I ration this out to like, well, I think playing like 1 or 2 hours a day maybe. That's healthy. Like I would do that as a sort of compromise where I don't know if I would say one side is lost or not, but maybe you would frame it as like one side is lost. Like the emotional side wanted to play for, yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Absolutely, right? Because one side of you wants to play for 16 hours a day.
But like maybe the intellectual side was like 0 hours ago. Like, don't play video games at all. But then you like compromise.
Sure. So both. Anytime you integrate or compromise, both sides lose.
Okay. That's
right?
okay. Sure. Okay. Gotcha.
Right. So my point is that there's a different way, and I think it's fine. What you've done is awesome. Like I'm not trying to. I think like the higher you climb on the MMR scale, the harder things get, and the more subtle they become.
Sure. Okay.
So I think there's another way to go about this, which is to metabolize the root of why do I want to play 16 hours a day in the first place. It's not about reconciling two parts. It's about getting to the source of like what does 16 hours a day mean to me? What's important about this?
Okay.
And then as you get down that road, something cool happens, which is that the desire kind of melts away. And then you're sort of left without either side. And then you're kind of like, you can just sort of make a choice and you're not being like driven by these two different things.
Sure. Can you expand on that when you say the desire melts away? Like, can you think your way through wanting to ever play video games? Yeah, what do you mean by that? Can you expand on that?
Theoretically, you can think your way through that. There is a subset of the practice of yoga. I'm not talking about the postures. I mean like the traditional meaning of the word yoga, which is like paths to enlightenment, called Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge.
Okay.
So one major text of that is a text called the Brahma Sutra, which is like a text that talks about logical argument. So it's like a text on argument, basically. But there are, theoretically, it is possible. It's not logic, it's more contemplation. And then like if you kind of think about, so theoretically, maybe it's possible. It's something that when I was learning, I was taught that this is the hardest path of yoga, of which there are very, very few true yogis who like really know how to do this anymore, because it's not logic, it's contemplation. But the other way that I would think about it is, so first of all, does that answer your question, or what was your question?
What do you mean when you talk about like the dissolution of desire? I guess I kind of thought it was going to be. I don't know if there was like, oh, well, when you just do this, but I've heard of like the far more complicated ones. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
But there's absolutely a dissolution of desire. So like this is where things get kind of cool, which is like the more that you explore the origin of whatever your desires are, the more you will discover that there is nothing at the bottom.
Okay.
Right. So we assume that the things that we want are like real. But like once you realize the origin of the want, you realize that, oh, this is like not a real thing. It's just, so like just to give you a simple example, let's say I want to play a particular video game. So I've been on the fence about buying Starfield.
Okay.
Because I don't know, right? And so I really look at, okay, do I want to buy the game? Do I not want to buy the game? I draw a logical argument about reasons to buy Starfield, reasons to not buy Starfield. And I can go back and forth, but the real antidote to that is like, why do I want Starfield in the first place? What am I looking for? And the more I go into myself, the more I realize, okay, like, what is the origin of my desire for Starfield? I saw an ad about it. Where's the origin of my desire? I saw people talking about it. Where's the origin of my desire? Oh, like I enjoy playing Morrowind and Oblivion so much that I long for that experience again. And then as I sit down and I engage in some degree of like reflection and contemplation, okay, so like I've had things that I enjoyed in the past. Do I want to hold on to that? I don't need to. I can just appreciate that for what it is. And it's kind of weird, but at like the end of that process, there's just nothing there.
Is it necessarily good to dissolve all of your desires? I don't know how big this forgetting. Like the counterclaim I'm going to say is like, what if you have a desire to be like a good father or a good parent? Like, would you want to drill down?
It depends on what your goal is. So when you say good, how are you defining that end zone?
Good, normatively, morally. Like, it sounds like dissolving a desire to partake in a vice is tautologically good because vices are bad, and if you can dissolve your desire to have a vice, you've done something good, right? We move away from vice and towards virtue. That's what I'm thinking good. You've made yourself a better person, improved your character, I guess.
So I'm going to say, so a couple things. The first is that there's a subset of spiritual practitioners called Agori Babas.
Okay.
Gor means fear.
Okay.
Agor means lack of fear.
Okay.
So these are people who intentionally engage in vice-like behavior as part of their spiritual progression.
Okay.
Now, in this case, vice-like behavior includes marijuana, eating of meat, even cannibalism in some cases.
Okay.
And they actually intentionally expose themselves to negative things to try to transcend this like tautological idea of like good and bad.
Okay.
So they drink alcohol and get high and eat fish and meat and sleep in cemeteries and stuff like. So there's a spiritual path that kind of does that. But then the goal there is that this idea that this tautology between good and bad is actually like a human construction, and that it's not a real thing. That it's kind of this non-dualism, which is like a philosophical view that most of the yoga practitioners kind of take. It's the dominant school that has emerged historically.
Okay.
So the first thing is that there's a perspective that tautologically good and bad is not a real thing, and it's just these are judgments that we make, right? And we know that good and bad changes over time because people used to think something is good, now they think it's bad. So it's really good and bad. Sure. Second thing is from a more practical perspective, I think that for 99% of people moving on this path will improve their life in a significant way. But if you really look at the precision of it, abandoning desire makes you not a good citizen in the world of life. So if your goal is to break free of the cycle of suffering and to become enlightened and achieve whatever your highest human potential is, which can be viewed as virtuous, and there's a whole fun angle there, right? So like, but as you become more and more enlightened, like you don't behave the way that a normal person will. Generally speaking, I think that, like I said, for 99% of the times, that's good. But let's remember that like when Buddha started his journey on his enlightenment and also became enlightened, he basically abandoned his wife and child and kingdom and pursued something else. I think most people don't get there.
Sure.
But technically, if you want to really get to it, like you could say, okay, so there are yogis in the Himalayas who've been meditating in caves for 40 years. What good are they doing in the world? Who knows?
Okay.
That's my answer. I don't know if that answers your question.
What was this originally about? What it means to dissolve your desires? Okay.
Is that good?
Gotcha.
Right. So I think it will lead to less suffering. But the interesting thing, the reason people get scared about it is because as we dissolve our desires, we also lose some things that give us a compass in life, like ambition.
Sure. I think I probably would agree with that. That like people reframe a lot of things negatively that are probably actually important parts of society. So for instance, like feeling negative when your peers judge you, or feeling competitive or a pressure to do something socially is probably an important part of the human experience in terms of like building society, because we want to feel like we can pressure people to act in certain ways, stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make in our society is that assuming that negative emotions are bad. Like, there's a reason why every human being feels anger, feels shame, feels guilt. And it's fascinating because as people move away from their negative emotions, that's actually when they get stuck. Because if you kind of think about it, like I did a YouTube video about this, but it's a fascinating concept that like everyone avoids shame, but shame is the most powerful corrective motivating force in you as a human being. And so when you start suppressing shame, we literally neuroscientifically lose out on the ability to learn from mistakes and adapt to circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. There's a quote that I had when I was a StarCraft 13 years ago, but the quote was like, to achieve perfection is to sacrifice growth. And the idea is that like, you don't feel an impetus to change or improve or do something, and you essentially like cut yourself off from any motivating forces to actually change or be better. So yeah, I think I agree with that.
So the interesting thing is that as you dissolve more desires, you become more free, and you can end up choosing to act compassionately, which is usually what happens.
That's good.
So I think getting rid of ambition is only scary until you discover that there are other compasses, and most people want the compass instead of ambition, because ambition is like relentless, and it kind of drives you as opposed to you controlling it. And the freedom, the freedom to choose is liberating, and oftentimes when people are truly free to choose, they make the right choices.
Okay. My second monitor is here, so I'm looking at you, but it looks like I'm not looking at you. Just so you know that you're right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Did you want to walk down this road anymore? Do you want to move to another area, or?
Well, did I answer your question?
Something that would, this is very difficult for me. I think something that would help push me along a little bit. It's very hard for me to find role models since my job and everything I do is like so unique. It's really hard to find people in the world that I would be like, oh, this guy's doing something, I want to be more like him. I think that when you give me this kind of overarching like dissolution of desires, the freedom to choose better paths, oftentimes the path that you choose post-dissolution will be better than the the more hardline road you run. Prior to that, it would be interesting if there were people that I could look at that were achieving or accomplishing in my arena those types of things that had made those decisions. Does that make sense? So for instance, something you're telling me is the ambition driver, the ambition engine might feel good because it pushes and pushes and pushes, but then if you could dissolve everything underneath that and then make other choices, it might be better. But I mean, obviously, intellectually and emotionally, I'm very tied to that ambition engine. And it's hard for me to, I'm hearing what you're saying, but there's a lot of disbelief without me being able to find somebody in the world and like, oh, that person did that, and I see they're doing, like, I aspire to that, I want to aspire to that, so push me in that direction. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, but, so do you, I'm getting kind of this tacit idea that I need someone to, not need, but if I set a role model for myself, it helps motivate my behavior.
It could. Or, like, if there's a particular habit that's good, I like to see the proof of concept of that, I guess. So like if somebody tells me something like, oh, like, you met me a year ago, and I told you that I was going to read, one book a week, and then they talk to me about, the 52 different books they read last year, just because they found some, like, novel way to work reading into their schedule. Like maybe they read, like, 2 pages after every League of Legends game. If I see that, then in my life, I'm like, holy crap, this guy has a really good outcome. He had a really cool process for doing it. I'm going to copy that. That's kind of what I'm thinking, yeah. So when you talk about the inspiration thing, I'd be curious. Yeah, to see, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know who you would consider a good role model. I don't think that, so the only thing that comes to my mind is my own experience with my own journey.
Okay.
But I don't think that I'm an appropriate role model for you. I think we're colleagues, and I'm happy to share what that experience looked like for me. And the reason that I'm advocating for it is because I think it has been profoundly positive in my life.
Okay. Can you actually, so then I'm kind of curious, for however much you're obviously comfortable sharing, you have, from everything that I've seen, you've got an awesome family, you've got an awesome, like, company, and you do really cool stuff online. How do you balance out, how do you balance? What's the emotional decision? Somebody comes to you with an offer or an ability to expand your business, twofold. You've got an opportunity to do this, but it might come at like significant cost to your family. What is the process like for you? How do you even begin to have that internal dialogue? Yeah, what's up? Yeah.
Yes. No, I can share my own experience. So to begin with, like, I wanted to be big when I was growing up. Like, I wanted to be an important person. I grew up Indian. Indian diaspora in the United States means that you've got a couple of career choices.
Yeah.
There's a very strong founder effect. So there's like serious brain drain. So all the Indian kids. So I grew up in a city where there were 5 people my age in the whole city. There were 5 Indian people in my grade in the whole city. 3 of us became doctors. Right. So that's like, it's just staggering. So I grew up with this culture that was very like education focused, achievement focused, not tiger parents, but that's just kind of the culture. Like my parents were very loving and supportive. And so I grew up in like, when I was 15 or 16, I told people I wanted to be a doctor, and they got impressed with that because, I look like such a smart boy, right? And then that fed my ego. And then when I went to UT, I was a freshman and I majored in pre-med, and I was like, I'm gonna be at the top of my class. And where did I want to go to med school? I wanted to go to med school at Harvard because that's where all the Indian kids want to go. And so when that ambition was my primary driving force, I found that it could not conquer the other parts of myself. Because there was the part of me that wanted to play for 16 hours a day. And so those 2 parts would fight. And because of whatever, on some days I would study and on some days I wouldn't. And certainly not good enough to get into any medical school for that matter. So that changed when I went to India, and I sort of discovered a different way of like looking at myself and like understanding like where my ambition comes from.
Can you real quick, how old were you when you went to India?
21.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, go ahead.
And then, so I then decided to become a monk, but that too was like actually the same driving force as what I later discovered, is that I concluded logically that like I can't compete with these kids. Like there's no way I'm gonna be able to achieve my goals and what I want, and I'm basically a failure at life. So what I did is I did this really interesting ego trick where I started devaluing that which I could not have.
Okay.
Right? So, like all these kids are materialistic and they're shallow and they all want to, make lots of money and drive fancy cars and things like that. I'm going to rise above that and become spiritual.
Sure.
So I'm going to have this ego. Huh?
I was going to say that's super common, yeah, that when somebody can't have something, they start to say, well, actually, that sucks anyway, and this is the way that I'm blah, 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 yeah.
Right. So I kind of went down that road, and then thankfully my teachers recognized that my desire to become a monk was not like genuine, it was escapism. So they didn't take me, but they continued teaching me. And then, the big irony is at some point I gave up on my dreams, right? I was like, there's no fucking way. I graduated with 2.5 GPA, applied to med school for 2 years, got 110 rejections, 80-something rejections, applied my third year, got another 20, 30, 40 rejections, and at that point, after my second year, I had kind of this formative moment where I started thinking about, like, what do I want? And then I changed the way that I started looking. It's not about desire or anything like that, like I kind of let go of all that stuff. And I was like, my teacher told me to do something, so I'm going to do it out of like faith, not out of personal desire or ambition or anything like that. I trust these people, and they said do this, so I'm going to do this.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So you coming from the US and you being really ambitious, and then you kind of like changing your ambitions to different things, why were you in a state where you would trust those teachers? Or what do you think made it that you were like, you know what, I'm going to put aside my ego a little bit and trust these guys, instead of just like, screw these guys, they're dumb, I'm going to go back and follow my own stuff?
So I would say that if you are a GSL champion in StarCraft, and you queue up against someone who just installed the game, this is what my interactions with them were like. They just crushed. I mean, it wasn't competitive, but they just bodied me every single time. They understood so much about me that I did not understand, and they taught me all of that stuff about myself.
Okay, so they basically they earned the respect with just the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, right. So they like helped me understand like how to live, like these fundamentals. 'Cause we don't teach that. We don't teach people how their mind works. And then the other cool thing is they never asked me to have faith or trust in them. My teachers were good. They also recognized that what I needed was questions, not answers. They also did a good job of answering whatever questions I had, which in many spiritual traditions is like not very good. So it didn't matter how hard the question was that I asked. They like basically always had a good answer.
Okay.
And so based on that, I was like, okay, these people know what they're talking about. And I think there's a lot of legitimacy to this. I also in that process started to trust more into it because I started looking into the science. I was very skeptical of all this meditation stuff when I started. I didn't believe it. I thought it was all BS.
Okay.
And then I got my first research position studying complementary alternative medicine, and that was a very formative experience for me too.
Okay.
This is all a roundabout way of saying like, as I gave up on my ambitions and just focused on, let's call it being a better person or accomplishing whatever, like a different kind of internal compass, I actually floated to the top of like the competitive pool.
Okay.
And then my ambitions re-emerged when I actually started. So I did medical school at Tufts, and then I matched at psychiatry at Harvard and Mass General in McLean, which are like the best programs in the country. I'm sure other people will disagree. UCLA is really good, Stanford's really good, Yale's really good, Hopkins is really good. A lot of great programs. But based on the academic status ladder or whatever, those were the top programs in the country.
Okay.
And so I kind of found myself there. And then one thing that I quickly realized is actually like I'm not like these people. So I remember like being in the line to get coffee at 4 p.m. with a fellow intern of mine. And he was an internal medicine intern, and man, like I was just talking to him about like medicine, and like what he knew was just mind-boggling. Like he was just so brilliant, and that was my experience. There's that people here are just like absurdly brilliant.
Okay.
And I didn't even have imposter syndrome. I think I would have had imposter syndrome if I didn't understand how to do this stuff with my mind. So I was like, all right, I ended up here anyway. So like even if I don't belong, whatever. And then I actually like once again sort of leaned in on a different kind of compass of okay, what do I want? And then my desire started emerging again because I started to get prominence. I started to achieve things there. I started to float to the top in some places, even in those institutions. And then I started to get ambitious. And then I started a private practice. And I had people coming to my office for my help who were CEOs of major companies and billionaires and things like that. And I was like, all right, this is what the goal is, right? It's to like become an expert, become the best in the world at something, and have people come to your office and pay you, or companies pay you piles of money to go out there and share your wisdom, which is like exactly what I wanted to do. And then I sort of realized a little bit after that that this is silly, like this is the same stupid ambition, and that there's actually a class of people out there that need help just as much or even more who no one is helping, no one's even listening to, no one's even talking to.
Can I?
And those are degenerates on Twitch.
Yeah. Okay. Before you can I ask you a challenging question? I'm curious.
Yeah.
So my interactions with you are fairly limited, but I've seen a lot of your stuff. We've spoken a lot. My perception of you is you're an incredibly intelligent individual. I'm sure part of that has been through your upbringing. Part of that is probably your parents are probably smart. I'm sure there's a mixture there. Do you think that you went through the path that you did, and rather than kind of like gunning for the top and being ultra ambitious and being obsessed with the prestige, you did a lot of work to kind of like discover or build yourself up as a character, and then the other stuff kind of came as a byproduct of that self-improvement, that mental like self-improvement. Do you think that the same process would work to make most people successful if they weren't exceptionally bright or intelligent? So say you take a kid.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. You think so?
Give me your example.
Yeah, I was gonna say you take a kid who drops out. I'm getting the stream, but 16, 17, reads at a 4th or 5th grade reading level, not very bright, doesn't have very many interests or hobbies, and this kid's like, you know what, I'm gonna go discover myself mentally. Do you think that this person would benefit in the same way that you did from that type of mental survey?
I do not think anything is 100%, but I feel 100% confident in that strategy. And here's why.
Okay.
So what do you think I gained in that process? So if I have a character sheet, what do you think that brought me? Do you think it got me XP? Do you think it got me skill proficiencies? Like, how do you conceptualize what I went through? Because you're saying, like, what I'm hearing you say is like, okay, is it predicated on your inborn talent? We'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
That's kind of what I'm hearing your question as.
A little bit, yeah. The way that I would frame it is, or the way that I would see it is, we kind of, I think as we grow up in a society, even like the bumper bowling, I imagine, right? Do you know what bumper bowling is? Never mind, I'm so sorry. But like a lot of people have kind of like different rails or different restrictions on it. It's where you go bowling, but instead of gutters, they got bumpers there for like 4-year-olds, so you can't go in the gutters. Not really. But yeah, you grow up, you got a lot of restrictions, you get a lot of thought patterns from society, you get a lot of like direction from people around you. And I guess going to a different environment with these guys allowed you to kind of like shed a lot of those societal expectations, a lot of those dispositions you had, and just let you really explore and build and work on yourself. And then once you kind of like fully fleshed out and understand yourself, you're able to re-engage with society and explore those things. Yeah, that would be
perfect, right? So now my question to you is, so like we all go through life with the instrument of our body, our mind, and I'm going to toss this word out there because I think it's complete. We can talk about this if you want to, in our soul. Okay. So we go through the world, always with us. Like you're like when you're playing a first-person game here, and you can't ever zoom out of it. Like you're you. And so what I learned in India, and why I think it doesn't matter what your IQ is, and I've got evidence of sorts, but we'll talk about that in a second. Is that all I learned was how I work.
Okay.
So it's like if you don't know how a keyboard works, how effective are you going to be at typing? If you're blind to a keyboard, if you are numb to your internal environment. And there's studies that show that there's 6 or 7 neuroscientific deficits that lead to addiction.
Okay.
And one of them is a lack of awareness of your internal environment. And what's clinically looks like is someone will say, I don't know what happened. I slipped up. No, there's a whole series of subconscious stressors, pressures, willpower degradation, lack of sleep. There's 1,000 things that are going on which is responsible for your behavior on this particular day. We're just blind to it.
Sure.
So I think that anytime we're numb or blind to, and think about this for a second. If I am numb or blind to the driving forces, which doesn't mean they stop driving, it just means that I'm not aware of them.
Yeah.
Right? And then what happens is actually exactly what you did with this conversation, which is I have this conflict between these two things, and I'm not going to shit on you here.
Sure,
but it's a great example. I have a conflict between these two things, and what is the logical answer? But the real answer that I'm offering, because this is my perspective, my bias, it's my experience, is that if you understand the origin of those two perspectives, it's not about which one is right, it's about where does this come from. And that has very real utility. And this is where, if you want to talk about evidence, so like from an anecdotal perspective, this is what I advocate for people like my patients and my clients and things like that. It's what I advocate to my kids, and I think that those people tend to be pretty happy. They tend to have good outcomes. Sometimes those outcomes are scary, like makes me wonder whether I'm making a mistake, and I've sought supervision around that. So for example, like 30% of people who come into my office within 12 to 18 months will change their job.
Okay.
And so I started getting scared about, like, am I biasing these people and pushing these people to make a change? Because that shouldn't be happening. And then what I sort of ended up concluding is that as we start this process, what people realize is they start shedding their conditioning or their socialization or living a life of shoulds and start gravitating towards what they want. They start changing their jobs.
Okay.
And they tend to be like predominantly happy after that process, and oftentimes paradoxically even more successful.
Okay.
And then there's also, I mean, if you look at, now we talk about real evidence, because my anecdotal experience ain't worth much, honestly. We look at it scientifically. We look at real evidence. We can look at studies on mindfulness, on meditation, on developing narrative, on healing trauma, and there isn't, I haven't seen, any evidence, maybe it's out there, but that this only works for people who are very talented. In fact, the whole point of mindfulness and the reason that we have it as an evidence-based intervention as a part of psychotherapy is it works for people on the autism spectrum, it works for people with Down syndrome, it works for people with low IQ, high IQ, men, women, old, young. It works for everybody because it's a fundamental facet of like our wiring, and it's how our brain works. And when we strengthen our frontal lobes, it helps us with impulse control. Right? That's like a neuroscientific fact. So I don't think that, I mean, I'm happy to be challenged. I think it's a great question, but I don't think it's specific to me.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just curious your answer. I think I probably agree. If you take a person that is underachieving in school and then they become more introspective, self-reflective, and get a greater understanding of themselves, it's hard to imagine that their life doesn't also significantly improve in other ways. Because my guess would probably be that those people that are in those bad situations are probably more inhibited than an average person when it comes to those introspective things. So opening that up would help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
That's a brilliant assumption that you're making, because that's literally what happened in my case, what we see a lot, right? So the worse your situation is, if we think about what is the effect on a human being of a bad situation, it hurts. And then our instinctive response when something hurts is to numb it.
Sure.
Because we haven't been taught how to fix it. So then we ignore it. And then what we actually see is people in bad situations are more introspectively blind. I don't know. What do you think about that? I don't think that's an evidence-based statement, but that's my opinion.
Sure. I can imagine it being the case that depending on the negative situations you grow up in, you examine negative behavior, it becomes normalized, and then you unleash that behavior into the world, and you lose the ability to even analyze introspectively what's good about it. It's just what you always say, something like that. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worked for me. Now, I think there's also like a couple things to notice. I mean, path that I'm on is financially less than the path that I used to be on, right? So there are costs. And then in terms of how do I navigate that, I really think about what's the point of money. And, you know, it's not a way of keeping score. I mean, sure, like I can buy more stuff, but like, you know, I don't, I mean, I'm a degenerate gamer. Like, what do I need money for?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right? So like some amount of security and stuff is really important, right? So and that's also where when I sort of think about it, like being freed of my internal drivers, I can kind of make a logical decision about how much do I want to do for free. So even if you look at like the pricing in my private practice, there was one point where there was at one point 50 to 70% of my patients were free care, and it was my financial situation was fine because I charged enough to the other 30 to 50%, and I had a uniform financial policy, which was, you know, this is what my rate is, pay what you can.
Okay.
So I think some of those kind of the dust kind of settles. I don't know how, like once you're internally like your compass is set, then you sort of like can logically think through stuff and it kind of settles.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I have like a similar idea. I don't know how well I follow it, but I have a similar idea kind of to what you're saying. I think in the business world, you ever heard the term like first principles?
I've heard the term. I don't know what it means.
It's just basically like what you're orienting yourself towards, like what you about, like what you're trying to do. And
Yeah.
what you're saying is like anytime somebody would come like for advice, like I don't know where I want to go to college, what I want to do for a job, blah blah blah. Kind of like what you're saying, like those questions are never really important. The important questions like, well, you know, what do you want to accomplish, who do you want to be in like 5 or 10 years or whatever. Unless you have like those like very fundamental questions figured out, all the other questions become pretty simple. So I think kind of what you're saying about like figuring out kind of like the internal area of like what does it mean to, you know, take a pill or where does self-judgment come from or anything like that. Then once if I like figured out those types of things, then the questions about like medication are not really difficult questions at all. They kind of fall into line very simply. Just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so there's like scientific support of that. So like even so part of the reason I started a coaching program was because I thought that there's some of these things, like coming down to first principles, were not emphasized in the mental health space. So just one example of that is the number one variable that correlates with vulnerability to pornography addiction is meaninglessness in life.
Okay.
So, but if we sort of think about it, we actually have evidence-based approaches to cultivate purpose and meaning and direction, which are all introspective.
Okay.
And so what happens if you look at the literature on positive psychology, when you cultivate introspection, the rest of the stuff falls into place. And the whole reason behind purpose, and this is why we teach so much about dharma or dharma, right? Is once you have that North Star, then stuff starts to fall in place.
Okay.
And the more important thing is that, and then we see these scientific benefits, which is that even though we're not treating pornography addiction, you just have to have a reason to not watch pornography. Like you have to have something in your life that is guiding you, pushing you. Because what happens with pornography addiction or video game addiction is it just fills up the empty space in your life and it drags you down.
Sure. I think there's a lot of antisocial behavior that falls into this. Like when you ask like a prep school kid, you know, like what did you have to do in your life to not commit armed robbery? They don't really have an answer because they were going to school in the morning for band practice, they were doing football practice after school, their mom and dad picked them up. They were like, there's not even a question of why you would do that because that kind of like thing your life's filled by so many other things. So this seems to track from what I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did we get to your original concern about? I mean, do you want to talk more about stimulants and kind of outcomes and what to expect and how to think about it?
Sure. I have one more big question on that. If you want, and then you can go from wherever. Yeah. Another thing that's difficult for me. Okay, return to yours significantly. Okay, so pre versus post taking some kind of like mind-altering medication. Something that's very difficult for me is how do you figure out what is a positive effect of a drug that's helping you live a better life versus what's just like you being high and like having a good time. So some real examples I give of this is there's a lot of things that seem to overlap in terms of like getting high and then also like not having ADHD. So I don't know how many things are true, but I've read something that like if you sometimes overeating can be like a factor when it comes to ADHD people. That if you have like a bag of cookies, every time you walk by you want to grab one, even if you're not necessarily hungry. And then I noticed that like if I've had amphetamines, I can have anything in the house and I just won't eat it because I'm not tempted to. But like, am I actually making a better choice to not do that, or am I just too high to want to eat? And there's a lot of yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Neither.
Okay.
So let's understand the neuroscientific mechanism behind why you eat cookies when you have ADHD.
Yeah,
okay.
okay,
I mean, this is generally. This is great. This is like a mental question. So let's understand this, right? So why you eat cookies if you're not hungry? So people with ADHD are impulsive, which means that they engage in impulsive behavior. So if you look at like even the packaging on a cookie, the packaging on a cookie is designed to evoke an impulse. So you have, I'm not saying corporations are evil or anything like that, but it's not my area of expertise. But we all know that cookie companies design packages to evoke impulses, and then you have a brain that is vulnerable to impulses in a way that is, so normally what happens in the brain is we have all kinds of integration of signals. Okay, so you have, for example, like a glucagon level, and a leptin level, and a ghrelin level, and all of these like levels, insulin, glucagon, leptin, and ghrelin, are all in some fucking tango to tell you when to eat a cookie. Okay, so what happens in the case of ADHD is it's kind of like an impulsive behavior. Since it's around and there's an environmental trigger and a sensory input before you even realize what you're doing, and you don't even realize it's not a conscious choice, it's just like an impulse that you give into because your capacity to restrain impulses is low. So this is why, for example, like people with ADHD benefit from clean areas because what you really want to do is extend. So the key thing about impulses is, no, just think about this.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're someone with ADHD and you're struggling with impulsive behavior, the main thing that you need to understand is that the impulse is not sustained. It's an impulse. So what you really need to do, if you get distracted, is you need to ride out the impulse.
Okay.
So what's happening, the reason people in our society are getting fucked right now by ADHD is because our society is greasing the wheels for impulsive behavior. So this used to have a lock code, and now it has a thumbprint. Now it has Face ID. So if an impulse lasts half a second, I can pick up the phone. And the phone remembers which website. Now I have a notification too. So I have an impulse for 1 second. And in that second, what can happen? I can look at the phone. The phone auto unlocks. I don't even have to try to unlock it. I just have to point the phone at my face. And then it auto unlocks. I see a notification. I click on the impulse. There go 30 minutes. So what happens with stimulant medication is we are restraining the impulsiveness.
Okay.
Which I don't think that you weren't making conscious decisions in either case. Right? Your brain is processing that a cookie is there. It's just the impulse is controlled by whatever other directed behavior you have.
Gotcha. Okay. It's hard to, emotionally it's hard to process that, but I mean intellectually it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So what makes it hard for you to emotionally process that? This is great. Things are coming full circle.
Well, because intellectually everything you're saying makes sense. I feel like as people, I think we tend to think of ourselves as being more cognitive than we actually are. So things like impulses don't like fit into our cognitive understandings of ourselves. Like, why would I do something on an impulse? I'm choosing to do every single thing I'm doing. So the idea that like now I'm not making a really bad choice, but it's not a choice, it's just an impulse that I'm acting on. That's like it's just a hard thing to emotionally intuit for me, I guess. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
okay.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But I think like so. Let me tell you what I heard.
Sure.
Okay. You said, am I not eating because I'm high?
Yeah.
Versus the ADHD. So like, what is the emotional valence of each of those options?
Well,
Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it's full circling back to the original question of I guess like the character question kind of, or am I? Where?
So let's say one of those things is true. How do you feel about yourself?
Yeah, there's a different judgment. Like if I'm not
Absolutely.
Eating, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I'm not eating.
In both cases, it's a negative judgment.
Well. Yeah,
you see that? Because on the one hand, oh fuck, right? Fucking Steven is taking his fucking high pills, and sure, he's not eating cookies, which would be progress, but why aren't we eating cookies? Because we're fucking high.
Well, there's one. So like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I slightly disagree, but I understand what you're saying. The difference here is I think I largely have kind of sort of made peace with myself in terms of like taking the drug, but the rationalization in my mind is that like I think taking the drug is okay as long as I'm elevating myself to just a baseline level of impulse control. So if it is the case that I'm doing the medication appropriately and I'm at a baseline level of impulse control, I'm not doing this, that's good. But if I'm like overshooting and I'm just like abusing drugs, that's the bad part. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So but what I'm saying is like think about like so this is the study is rigged. Like I know that you reconciled it. That's fine. But what I'm saying is this shit is still working because what was so when you gave me two options. Right? Option number one is like I've got ADHD and that's why I'm eating cookies.
Sure.
And option number two is I stopped eating cookies. But why does your mind generate such a judgmental hypothesis for option two?
Well, if it's because I'm just super high, then it's just because I'm using drugs to shortcut like the growth and character that I should have to stop. Yeah.
But do you see how like out of the 1,000 things that you could have said, there's a differential diagnosis. There are 1,000 hypotheses why you're not eating the cookies. Which one does your mind settle on?
Well, obviously the drug, right?
Right. So that's coming from you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that thing is still active.
Well, I mean, I am doing it. That's a part of my reality.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's what I'm kind of saying is you're doing it and you've reconciled on an intellectual level. But that part of you that is frustrated with yourself for being weak, which by the way is, if I had to bet money, right? So this is the most common thing if you look at research on this. People with ADHD have harsh self-judgments, and so the way that the self-judgment manifests in your mind is by it's like a study bias. Like the options that it generates for you are rigged. The reason am I too high to? No, you're not too high. I mean, I don't think so. Right, so we also know, for example, that stimulant medication suppresses appetite. One of the major concerns about giving it to kids is that it can interfere with like, things like growth and stuff like that. Yeah. Which thankfully it's not too bad. But you know, there could be a neuroscientific. But I wouldn't characterize it as high. But that's what I mean. Is like you pick such a judgmental characterization as an option, which I think is significant.
Sure. I guess it's just because that's the thing I'm trying to avoid because I know that taking some medication is going to improve my life in these ways. But like if it's too much, it's probably yeah. Does that make sense?
Right. So the things that you're anxious or worried about, right? That's that emotional energy. And when you say it's a brilliant insight that this is emotionally not sitting with me, and then the question is why? It's because you're emotionally in the opposite direction.
Well, like let's say so hypothetically, let's say that I fix this. Okay, what's to prevent me from okay? So like here, talk me down from this one. I'm not saying I'm doing this, and this is all hypothetical. Sorry, I'm not asking for medication. So like let's say theoretically, like I solve all these issues. Like you're like I don't have any negative judgments whatsoever. You know, forget these things. I'm just gonna do 100 milligrams of methamphetamine every day because I have no judgment about this anymore. It improves my life in all these different ways. I'm doing so better here. Like what's the back away from the cliff there, as opposed to right now where you're saying probably too far in the other direction of being too judgmental. Like how would you? Yeah, what's the balance? Yeah.
So I would say it's just like any other medication.
Okay.
Right. So like you would have a relationship with your stimulant, the same that you do with like let's say cholesterol medication.
Oh, I super disagree. Yeah, rationalize this one because I have a hard time figuring this one out. In my mind, I have like behavioral modifying medication that works in your brain. I separate that way differently than like like insulin.
But hold on a second, because what was the premise that we started with? That we dissolved this stuff, right?
Okay.
So when we dissolve that stuff, it's behavior modifying. So what? There's no emotional energy behind that. I need this medication in the same way that I need cholesterol medication.
Yeah, I feel like the difference is that like I can't do anything mentally about like my triglycerol levels or triglycerol. I can't do anything mentally about my HDL. Like I can't think the way. Yeah, so the medication.
But you see that's your hypothetical is flawed because you're injecting your judgment into the hypothetical. Because look, when I tell you that it becomes just like, and if we don't attach any judgments to stimulus, if we dissolve that judgment, we no longer judge things. Then what happens is then it's just like any other medication. That's like you follow that logically.
I mean, I follow logically what you're saying, but it feels like it doesn't. So, like, for instance, I could have a day where I'm very focused and I can do everything I could do on my ADHD medication, like normally. But I couldn't have a day where I don't take my insulin as a type 1 diabetic, right? That one of those worlds is possible, one of those not. I do those things.
Right, but the reason that you are, so let me give you a different example, okay? So let's say like cholesterol medication.
Sure.
Now, there are people who can get really upset about their cholesterol medication and having to take it every day. Can you imagine that?
No, I've got family of diabetics and sometimes I don't even take their insulin, so yeah, I'm very aware of that. I can believe that.
So like people are like, like, oh, like I should be able to do this through diet.
Oh, that kind of
like,
stuff. Okay,
their
sure.
body image issues. This is the psychodynamics of psychopharmacology. We have all kinds of attachment to a particular pill. And what you're saying is this pill, I can understand how you would not have an attachment to, but this other pill logically has attachments for these reasons. No, bro, it's not logical, it's emotional. It's based on your attachment to that particular pill and what that pill means to you. It's not because of the physiologic thing. That's just what your mind says, right? Because what you're worried about, and this is true of all medications, like this is the part of my body that's weak.
Yeah, but I feel like I feel like we don't view our brains as our bodies. I think that's like the fundamental difference here. Like if my heart isn't doing something, I take medication for my heart. If my lungs, if my kidneys, I take medication. But you don't view yourself as your brain. That's like you, right? I feel, yeah, that's the difference, right?
Yeah. So, but I mean, when you say we, who is in that we?
Well, I was speaking we as in humans in general. I think we view ourselves as being our brain rather than like our brain as an organ in our body that we can medicate.
Do you view yourself that way?
I probably do. Yeah.
Right. So I think this is where like I'm telling you, man, I've worked with plenty of people who do not identify with their brain and identify with their body more.
That's really interesting. Right? I almost don't believe that. That's crazy. But okay, that's really interesting to me. Okay.
Right. So like you can take anyone with body image issues. Okay. Who I am is determined. This could also be because you're a dude and I'm a dude. So like we don't get judged as harshly on average. I'm not saying that we don't get judged. This is balancing out, right? So like it used to be that women had body image issues way more than men do. And when I work with women who have body image issues, they like a lot of who they are is tied up to their body. And working with and that's not just one reason for that. That's evening out by the way with social media. But then there's like other things that biologically women go through that men don't have an equivalent, like pregnancy and childbirth. So when you go through pregnancy, it makes permanent alterations of your diabetes, your fat distribution. The change to breast tissue is profound. Right, like when they swell and you've got all this stuff, there's definitely people can identify with the body. I think you're quite intellectual, and I think that you would be afraid, you would fear losing a chunk of your brain way more than you would fear losing a piece of your hand.
Yeah, of course.
right? But if I'm a professional wrestler, like it could be the other way around. So I think the key thing here is your attachment to it, which is the problem. That's my point. And so the problem here is that once you dissolve that attachment, the conclusion that you assume disappears because the reason you infer that is because of your attachment to your brain over your body. I don't know if I lost you there, but...
A little bit, or not you lost me a little bit, but I follow you a little bit more. I guess I mean I did lose a little bit. You're in your world, yeah, like the brain and the body, and then like the spirit or the soul or whatever. These things exist all kind of differently from one another, and medicating your heart, or medicating your liver, or medicating your brain are all essentially the same thing. But I'm coming into the normative judgment that load brain medication differently, so all of my questions are kind of fundamentally poisoned as soon as I ask the question.
Exactly, right? Because I say then it becomes just like a cholesterol medication. What's your response? You say no, it doesn't, and then I ask you why is it different, and then you're like, well, because my brain is different from body, and I'm like, well, hold on a second. That is where you're inserting your judgment, right? So if we're really presuming that you've metabolized this stuff, then it does become that. And I've seen that process many times, by the way. Right, so like when you work with psychodynamics of psychopharmacology, people like taking their SSRI or their antidepressant medication. There's all kinds of psychotherapy that you have to do around that. What does it mean to take? I'm dependent on this medication for my fundamental happiness in life. Oh my god, I don't want to take happy pills. Like this isn't like ADHD where we know that the brain is different. Like this is just depression.
Sure.
Right? With ADHD, these people are neurodivergent. Their brain is wired differently. But me, I was fine for the first 25 years of my life, and then something happened and I became weak. Right? Even those people will say ADHD medication is okay, but depression medication isn't.
Okay.
So it all has to do with your attachment to by attachment, I'm using it in an Eastern sense, like the meaning that you associate with that thing.
Okay.
And what I'm hearing through and through is that you associate a lot of meaning, and you adapt it beautifully and cognitively reframe beautifully, and whoever's prescribing this shit did a great job. Right? Because you're taking it, sounds like you're adherent, you're doing all this other stuff. And by the way, there's a very simple answer to your question of like how I know. I think you asked a question something about
I see a lot of really positive outcomes, and I don't know, like, is this like the medication is working now, Stephen, but now I'm making good choices, or am I just really high and now like I can do problem solving really?
Yeah. So that's where from like if I'm teaching a med student class, like there's a really simple answer to that. That's why we have like measurable, scientific, validated instruments.
What do you mean by that?
Right, so
ADHD, yeah.
Yeah, so like for example, we will track symptoms.
Okay.
So how do we know if it's the medication that's working or you're making good choices? Well, first of all, you have to remember that making good choices is a complex neuroscientific process, which medication working could mean it helps people make good choices. That's literally what medication does, right? It corrects whatever weaknesses or supplements whatever weaknesses there are in the brain that prevent these people from making good choices. Now, there's a whole complicated thing there. So some people will consider ADHD medication to be like glasses. It doesn't fix the problem as long as your glasses are on, your eyesight is normal. I think it's a good analogy.
Okay.
But I think there's all kinds of problems with that perspective. So. And if you look at the data on ADHD medication, there's some data that shows that the effect lingers for 3 to 6 months after you stop the medication. So there are other things going on with taking the medication.
Yeah.
That could have to do with things like developing healthy habits.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah, they're right.
Right. So and that's because the habits, I mean, the neurotransmitters for the habit circuitry and the location in the brain are completely different. The real tragedy in ADHD is that since you are impulsive, you never get the ability to develop habits.
Yeah.
Which is a real tragedy because the one thing that can protect you against your ADHD is the endocannabinoid system that is habits.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Anything else? Yeah.
I wanted to just share 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, whatever you want.
So when people think about ADHD, like I just wanted to like share how I understand what is effective about ADHD medication, what it does, and what it doesn't do.
Okay.
So if we look at ADHD medication, we have to understand that the problems that people with ADHD have come from 2 places.
Okay.
They come from the neurodivergence of the brain, let's just call it that, and they come from living a life with neurodivergence. So there are these social impacts that come from basically having untreated or undiagnosed ADHD. So, my favorite statistic about this is that oftentimes people won't have friends. So, like, kids with ADHD, by the time they hit the 2nd grade, they stop getting invited to birthday parties. So they have difficulty socializing, because they can't function well in school, their academic achievement goes down. This is why there is a causative impact in terms of depression later in life. It also creates the things that, I kind of see with a lot of people, which is a lot of harsh self-judgment. A lot of, I should be able to do this. This medical illness is different from all the other medical illnesses, and let me give you all the logical reasons why, right? You can't directly interact with your heart. You can't directly lower your triglycerides level. By the way, you can, but that's a conversation for different.
When I said do it, I mean like think it down. That's what I meant. Sorry,
Yeah, you can think it down.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, never mind. Okay, I believe you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
So it's wild, man.
Okay.
So, and anyway, it doesn't disable your point.
Yeah, I understand.
And so when we're thinking about ADHD medication, like what's the goal here? And that's where, like, I think we've got to understand 2 things. One is that even some of the trauma-induced consequences of growing up with ADHD will create ADHD symptoms.
Okay.
Impairments in concentration, difficulty focusing, difficulty with emotional regulation. If you look at the symptomatology of trauma and the symptomatology of ADHD, they overlap.
Okay.
And the real problem that we see with ADHD is when you grow up with ADHD and you get traumatized because you recognize you're just as smart as everyone else, but you can't f***ing do it. It's so easy. They're just sitting there and looking at a book and reading it. That's literally what reading is. They're just looking at a book. You can sit there and look at a book, but you can't read the words. So you feel incompetent. And as you grow up with that ADHD, you start to experience various micro traumas or even macroscopic traumas. Parents getting mad at you. Why are you like this? Like, you just need to study. You need to try harder. I used to get called into my, teacher's office once a semester for my parent-teacher conference, and they'd say, if he just applied himself, he'd do so well. He's got so much potential. And so that kind of stuff creates its own kind of trauma-induced cognitive deficits. And then if we look at treatment of ADHD, stimulants can correct the neurodivergence, but all that other stuff is not going to get corrected with stimulant. And some of those things, and some of the other consequences that happen when we grow up with ADHD is we fail to develop adaptations. So we get worse at developing like emotional regulation techniques and things like that. And the adaptations that we do develop, growing up as a neurodivergent kid in a neurotypical world, become maladaptations later in life.
Okay. We're
also more vulnerable to things like addictions and stuff like that. So when we look at stimulant medication, a lot of it doesn't get fixed, which confuses a lot of people. A lot of it does. If we look at stimulant medication, most of the research and the meta-analyses suggest that starting it early to prevent all of these psychological impacts will be protective in the long run and lead to better outcomes in terms of lifelong achievement, academic success, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Because this is what you've got to understand is you can have ADHD with certain cognitive deficits and untreated ADHD plus cognitive deficits plus failing out of school. What does that do to someone's psychological trajectory, their life trajectory? There's recently a study that showed that the majority of reasons that people are depressed today have nothing to do with like internal feelings or their relationships. They have everything to do with circumstances in their life. Lack of financial stability, living at home, whatever, other kinds of things. Their life objectively sucks. And so when we're thinking about ADHD medication and whether to do it or not do it, I think this is what you really need to think about, is that it's not going to fix everything. But it'll prevent a lot of damages, which is usually why we will medicate kids with ADHD if we choose to. And that even if you start medication as an adult, it's not going to fix everything, because there are the consequences of growing up with ADHD that need to be addressed. the last thing to consider is that the effect size of ADHD medication is basically the same or slightly inferior to psychotherapy. And this kind of circles back to like, can I do it without medication? The answer is probably yes, but it takes a concerted effort, which a lot of people don't have the bandwidth for. And there's also data that shows that medicating someone with ADHD makes the effect of psychotherapy better. So when you have someone who can pay attention in psychotherapy, they get a greater effect size. The other cool thing is that the effect of psychotherapy lingers for years after the completion of treatment compared to months for ADHD medication. So this is kind of all a roundabout way of saying, you know, I still think that you got to do what's right for you and everyone's got to do what's right for them. I think that there's a lot of very real shame and judgment that kids with ADHD develop and then carry into adulthood. And that if you really want to conquer this problem, I think it's usually like a combination of like all the above. So medication, if that's what works for you, psychotherapy, if you have the time and energy for it, and just as a prescriber myself, the primary reason I prescribe medication is when people don't have time to do everything else. That's really, because I think there are very few cases where, at least in psychiatry, we really need medication. Like, in most cases, psychotherapy is just as effective as whatever we're prescribing.
Okay.
So I think those are just a couple of considerations.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun to chat. Yeah.
Likewise. And good luck with all of your endeavors. And, yeah, I really encourage you to continue exploring that. I'm sure you will. But we're really, like, trying to get to the root of this stuff. And I'm so curious about your personal take on spirituality and stuff like that. Because I think you're primed for it.
Yeah.
More so now. Yeah.
More so now than before is absolutely true, but that might be from like 1 to 6 out of 100, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, more primed than before. Are you just going to Twitch on, or do you not say that publicly?
No, I'm not going to TwitchCon.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Are you going to TwitchCon?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going this year. I've got other stuff. I'm doing, I think one thing. Wait, it's next week, right?
The 20th to the 22nd, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going on a spiritual retreat.
Oh, well, good for you. So much better than the rest of us. Wow. I'll be enjoying my
I love TwitchCon.
No, you're good. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, good for you. Wait, when you do the
yeah,
do you take any family members with you, or is it your wife, or is that like always like a just you thing?
This time I'm going alone, and this is the first time that I've gone in 12 years.
Wow. How long is the retreat for?
So, 5 days.
Cool.
So it's been, thankfully I got enough to, I mean, I have a spiritual practice that's pretty set. Always interested in learning more, but it's just with medical training and streaming and all that kind of stuff, like that kind of took a step on the back burner, and now I've got enough time to do that kind of thing.
When you do your spirituality stuff, do you ever maintain contact with the people that you felt like helped you in your early 20s, the guys you used to go over and study with, or are you kind of like not talking to those people anymore?
I'm not talking to those people anymore, for the most part. It's interesting. So I think the person who's the closest to what I would describe as a guru, I basically only had contact with them for 2 years. And for a while it was very hurtful because it kind of felt like they ghosted me, and I don't know what happened, but,
gotcha.
you know, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, hey, I appreciate the talk. Do you want to, yeah, I say share yourself. I think most of my audience knows who you are, but yeah, where can I find you if you're looking for more cool stuff or projects you're working on, or if you could direct people to one link or one thing, where would you send people, yeah? Yeah,
so I think since we're talking about ADHD, we have, so like part of what we built at HG, we build different kinds of resources and stuff. We've got a ton of videos that I think are pretty good on YouTube about ADHD, but we also have like a guide where I go through kind of like in a more comprehensive way, like practices, meditation techniques and things like that to specifically understand the different parts of ADHD and how to really overcome them. So you can check out Dr. K's guide, and then I stream on YouTube and Twitch. And yeah, check us out at Healthy Gamer GG. And likewise, where can we find you, Steven?
Destiny, yeah, on YouTube, Kick, maybe Twitch again someday, and Instagram. So yeah, thanks a lot.
And then is there anything that you're going to be doing coming up that we should tune into? Anything that you're excited about in terms of podcasts or collabs or debating anyone cool?
My most exciting thing is finally, I think it's the 20th or the 21st next month. I finally do my Ben Shapiro debate. That should be fun.
Oh wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yep.
That's I'd love to do. You said 20th of next month, so November.
Yeah, the 20th to the 21st. Yeah, that should be fun. Yeah.
Where is that going to be? You know where we can? I assume it's going to be live.
I have no idea yet. I think Lex Freeman wants to do it in a studio, so it might be like all pre-recorded. We might do it live. I'm not sure yet. So yeah, still ironing out the details.
All right, so I'm just trying to figure out where I find a watch party.
Yeah, it'll make the rounds, I'm sure. So yeah.
All right, cool, man. Well, good luck to you on your debate. I look forward to it, and thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for
Take care, man.
Talk to you later.
Bye. I mean, you're asking me what my opinion is, so I'm going to say I think you're approaching it wrong.
You're listening to the Cash Digital Network.
We need to roll back the state. We spy on all of our own citizens. Our prisons are flooded with nonviolent drug offenders. If you want to know who America's next enemy is, look at who we're funding right now. Every single one of these problems are a result of government being way too big.
You're listening to The Problem on the Cash Digital Network. Here's your host, James Smith.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is preemptively hiding out Anne Frank style in an attic somewhere. Rapid fire Bernstein. This was a smart thing for you to do following the day of jihad. You got right up to where that attic where you belong.
You got to practice your hiding out in the attic skills now while you can.
Where are you?
This is a freshly purchased attic, so I've made my accommodations. I got my food storage here. I'm good to ride out jihad. They can do all the jihading they want.
Rob sold his home and bought an attic. It was just a fair swap. You were like, I'm going to be just fine here. All right.
You got to get through 3 floors of Gleam before you get up to this attic.
All right, there you go. All right, anyway, before we get into the show tonight, me and Rapid Fire Bernstein are coming to Europe, London, Belfast, Glasgow, Amsterdam. We're coming all over the place. CommonDaveSmith.com. Go there to buy tickets. The tickets are selling very fast, but there are still some available, so go on over to CommonDaveSmith.com if you want to come see us next week when we're out in Europe. Looking forward to that.
Live run your mouth from the Anne Frank porch, so come
There you go. If you buy a ticket to the Amsterdam show, you have free tickets. Come see Rob at the porch of the Anne Frank porch. God, if there's a way to make that happen, that would be the most epic porch tour.
Well, if anyone from Amsterdam knows how to build a porch on the outside of that building in time, I'll be there.
It's a pretty busy street outside, but I don't think the Dutch are pretty passive people. I don't think they'll mind. All right, we have there's a few things I wanted to talk about today. I want to start the show with something unrelated to Israel-Palestine, but of course we're going to get back into the war over there because it's kind of impossible to not talk about that right now. But there was a moment that I missed. I just caught it. I just caught the clip of this on Twitter. It was pretty amazing. Rob has not seen this yet. I'm excited for you to see this in real time here. But so Panetta, the former CIA director, was on Fox News Sunday, and a question was asked to him that me and Rob have been dying to see somebody in the corporate press ask this question, and it was asked to him. And so here, that's all the setup I'll give you. Here's the question. Here's the response.
I'm Speaker, but they're investigating still the Hunter Biden situation. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about that letter you signed on to from former intelligence officials saying that the laptop and the emails had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Obviously, the New York Post and others saying the Hunter Biden laptop letter was the
All right, so let's pause it right there. So now you know. Now the secret's been lifted. Finally, one of the people who signed on to this letter is asked point blank, how do you feel about that now? I mean, you signed on to this letter that this laptop had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. That didn't age too well. Now, he was also one of the guys. He was one of the 4 former heads of the CIA who Biden would make sure to mention that. So anyway, he gets asked the question point blank. Let's keep going.
Long. That letter was used in the debate. I haven't asked you this, but do you have regrets about that now looking back, knowing what you know now?
Well, Brett, look, I was extremely concerned about Russian interference and misinformation. And we all know intelligence agencies discovered that Russia had continued to push disinformation across the board. And my concern was to kind of alert the public to be aware that these disinformation efforts went on. And frankly, I haven't seen any evidence from any intelligence agency that that was not the case.
You don't think that it was real?
I think that disinformation is involved here. I think Russian disinformation is part of what we're seeing everywhere. I don't trust the Russians, and that's exactly why I was concerned that the public not trust the Russians either.
I don't want to dwell on this because we have bigger things to talk about and bigger urgency. But obviously, Hunter Biden serves his laptop and its investigation.
You can tell that even he's a little surprised by that answer, and he's like, I don't want to dwell on this because my job here isn't to make you look bad. My job is to get you over. But even Hunter Biden has admitted this was his laptop. All right, I guess we'll just go with that. So there you have it. I've wondered before. I'm sure you have too. Like, what would they say if asked about this? And that's the amazing thing is how much you're like, no matter what happens, these people will just never admit it. They'll dig their heels in, they'll come up with some rationalization, and then when they can't even do that, they'll just go, no, it's still Russian disinformation.
Well, he actually didn't say that. He's very slippery, and it's an interesting maneuver. But he said he took the opportunity to educate the public about Russian misinformation because Russian information is a constant threat and it's always all around us. And he's leaving it open to interpretation that there still could have been Russian involvement, but that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, yeah, the laptop, that was Russian misinformation, but I took the opportunity of the laptop story to educate everyone about the Russian misinformation.
Well, he goes a little bit further than that, where he goes, I still haven't seen any evidence that there wasn't Russian involvement.
You can always assume that anything, no matter how factual it is, I think the fact that we breathe oxygen, that's Russian misinformation because no one's told me that it's not Russian.
I've never seen any evidence that it's not.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good. What an interesting standard. But I love just Brett there kind of mumbling at the idea. I think Hunter Biden has admitted that it's his laptop, but okay.
What's up on it? I mean, we're a news station and you're making shocking claims.
We have more important things, and obviously, like he's gotten there to talk about the war in Israel and Palestine. But it's just like, look, we have more important things than to figure out if our intelligence agencies are interfering in our elections. We don't have to waste time with that. There's probably a weather balloon we could spend 6 weeks on.
I was surprised the lie wasn't the general population of news agencies were confused about what the word earmark means. An earmark means the possibility or that it's got the characteristic and features, and so at no point in time are we actually saying that this was created by the Russians. We were just letting the public know that the Russians are clearly involved in the process, and this had some of the qualities of what they, but we were never saying that this was Biden's laptop. You guys misinterpreted us. I would have thought that would have been the lie.
Yeah, I would have thought it would just be something better than still sticking with this isn't the guy's laptop who is admitting that it's his laptop. Not only that, didn't he threaten to sue? I think Hunter threatened to sue over releasing the laptop at one point. Like he was like, hey, that's my laptop. You can't just release that out to the public. And then they were like, the problem is that you signed this waiver at the repair store, so it's actually not yours anymore. You forfeited it over to the guy. But when he threatened to sue, it was like, well, that's a pretty big admission that it's yours, right? Anyway, I thought that was kind of just a very revealing and a little kind of lighthearted and fun compared to some of the other stuff we've been talking about. So I want to play that video for everybody. I very much did enjoy that.
It's a remarkable thing to let him off the hook for. Excuse me, sir, but that altered the course of the last election. During the live debate, Donald Trump, I think they said that they censored him essentially and said you're lying about this. One of the largest news papers on record was removed from the internet off the basis of this report by these intelligence people. So what happened here?
Yeah, you got it wrong. You changed the trajectory of the history of this country in a pretty profound way by lying. So what do you think about that? Do you regret that? And like, well, no, because you
might as well just say because I did my job well. We here in the deep state were opposed to Donald Trump because we need war abroad at all times.
Wouldn't that
he didn't create enough new wars, so I did my part in ensuring that we got a deep state coup back into office so we could have more wars.
And look at that. And he goes, and look at the results. I mean, the war in Ukraine fiasco going on. We're about to fund another war in Israel. We never would have had action like this under Trump, right? Like it would be so refreshing if he just came out and said that. You're like, do I regret it? It worked. The goal was to get Trump out, and we did.
He's like, you know, if we actually get this Iran war to happen and the American people to support it, McCain will come back from the dead. It'll be the second coming of Jesus. You don't understand how hard we've been working on this.
Yeah, well, there you go. That would be nice if we heard that. Okay, let's move on. The next video, moving back toward the Israel-Palestinian conflict. The next video, what did I say was next one? I think it was the Ben Shapiro one, right? Let's check this out. All right, so the Ben Shapiro, this was from his show today, and Ben Shapiro laid out, it was very strange, but he kind of laid out some dominoes that he could see falling as a result of this Israeli war. So let's listen to this.
So the real risk for Israel in not finishing off Hamas right now is that this is taken as a sign of weakness, as it certainly would be, by Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a far more dangerous terrorist group than Hamas. Hamas is a dangerous terrorist group. They proved it by killing 1,300 Jews. Hezbollah currently has over 100,000 highly sophisticated rockets aimed directly at the north of Israel. Estimates suggest that were Hezbollah to fire all of those rockets, we wouldn't be talking about 1,300 dead Jews. We'd be talking about somewhere between 20 and 30,000 dead Jews. Day one. If Hezbollah gets in, Israel will have no choice to unleash the Air Force. If they unleash the Air Force, they're not going to be worried about civilian casualties at all. They're simply going to have to eviscerate the entire south of Lebanon and topple the regime in Lebanon to support Hezbollah. If that happens, Iran undoubtedly gets in, and so does Syria. If that happens, and Israel is now faced with a full war in the north, combined with a war in the south because they will not have defeated Hamas, that's the predicate. If Israel is forced to the wall, the possibility of nuclear exchange is extremely high. That is why it is very important that the United States provide material aid to Israel.
All right, so Ben Shapiro here laying out a list of dominoes that could fall, and of course there's this weird thing where I'll say this, I don't disagree with the entire middle section of that argument as being a possibility, at least something that we should be concerned about, but it's sandwiched on this like bullshit neocon bread. So like the meat was all right. It's the neocon bread that's really the problem. So it starts with him going, now if Israel doesn't finish off Hamas and shows weakness, then we go through this whole long list of, Hamas getting involved, Israel's Air Force retaliating, Iran and Syria getting involved, and then right at the end is, that's why America needs to fund this war right now. So it's very similar to what these guys would do with the war in Ukraine a lot, where they'd be like, oh no, there is a real risk of nuclear war. And the risk is that Russia wins in Ukraine. And then if they win, they move on to Poland, and then because Poland's a NATO country, now we have to go to nuclear war. Therefore, we must fund the war against Russia, just in case, to prevent nuclear war. It's just so backward. And you're like, yeah, but wouldn't having a direct conflict with Russia increase the risk of a nuclear conflict with Russia? And where exactly are you assuming? Why are you assuming that they take Poland next? Why is it the idea that if Israel doesn't do enough killing here, then Hezbollah might start pounding them with rockets for not killing enough people? That seems strange. Doesn't it seem a lot more likely that if Israel is slaughtering Muslims by the hundreds of thousands, that then maybe that would be what triggers Hezbollah to want to fire rockets over there, and then setting off this whole domino chain of events that Ben Shapiro's laying out here? If anything, it's so ass backwards, it borders on insanity. To listen to what Ben Shapiro just laid out right there, which by the way I think is very real. As I said on the last podcast, there's a very real concern right now that other Arab nations and other Arab forces like Hezbollah may not take this. They may not just allow Israel to completely flatten Gaza, as Lindsey Graham is out there calling for them to do. But if you recognize all of these concerns, you go, oh my God, Hezbollah could get involved, then the Israeli Air Force would have to go just bomb the shit out of Lebanon, then you could have Syria, Iran involved, you could have other Arab states in the region get involved, and that could lead to nuclear war. If you realize that that's a possibility, wouldn't the only rational response to that be like, okay, hold on, let's think before we launch this war. Let's really think about what the implications are here, right? Okay, let's make sure that cooler heads prevail here and we really have a strategy going in of how to avoid this. It's like, nope, war now, fund it till infinity, let's kill as many people as we can because there's such a danger of nuclear war. This is how, geopolitics works with neocons in charge. The stakes are so high, so let's start bombing. Let's start bombing things, we'll figure it out later. This really just, I don't know, I thought there was something about that was truly unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing with the Hezbollah risk and the escalations. That all makes sense, but I don't understand why you feel like there's more of a risk of Hezbollah getting involved if you don't go punish Hamas. I don't quite understand that logic.
I think the logic is something like, because then we seem weak, and then they don't respect us because they only respect strength. This is always kind of like the Warhawk logic. That you can't be weak. If you're weak, then everyone will pounce on you. You gotta be strong. When you're strong, then nobody's gonna do anything to you. You're like, yeah, this just doesn't. Look, you can say, and this is also part of the things that this is Ben Shapiro's worldview, is that no matter what any Muslim ever says is their grievance against Israel, their real grievance is just that they hate the Jews and they want to kill them, right? So it doesn't matter what they say, but that's kind of just like a convenient way to never have to deal with what anybody's saying. So I'm just saying that if you listen to what any of these people's grievances is with Israel, it's never like that. We just want to kill them because they're Jews. It's usually like we hate them because we hate the Jews because they oppress the Palestinians. You know what I mean? It's like that's usually what their line of logic is. So I'm just saying, if you do choose to take them at their word, you can ignore that at your own peril if you want to. But if you do listen to what they're saying, then actually slaughtering a whole bunch more Palestinians seems like the most likely way to provoke them into a further escalation. Anyway, it does not seem that anybody is going to be listening to me on this. Anyone in power is going to be listening to me on this anytime soon. I do just find it really funny though, the idea of look, this can escalate so bad, and that's why we must escalate right now. All right. By the way, I heard after I had said this on the last episode, I heard Colonel Douglas McGregor basically say the same thing. That he was like, what Israel's talking about doing in Gaza right now, he goes, I don't think these other Arab nations are going to stand by and take it. And I think you might see an invasion of Israel. And that's just, I came to that conclusion just thinking it through, but then hearing this kind of very decorated colonel saying the same thing, I was like, shit. I was kind of hoping he would say no, that's not going to happen because of X, Y, and Z. But he was just like, yeah, no, that's a real threat.
Well, might even be what they want, Davey Smith. Get that old Iran war going.
Well, yeah, this might be. We'll see. All right, guys, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor for today's show, which is sheathunderwear.com, the underwear of legends, the best pair of boxer briefs you will ever own. They have been sponsoring the show for over 3 years now. I still have the first pair that they sent me. I still wear it. It still feels just as good as it did 3+ years ago when I got it. This is the only underwear I wear. I swear by this product. I love it. They're also great guys. Love the guys who run the company. Go support a longtime sponsor of this show. And while you're there, get the best pair of boxer briefs you will ever own. Do that by going to sheathunderwear.com. Use the promo code problem20 to get 20% off your next order. That's sheathunderwear.com. Promo code problem20 for 20% off your next order. All right, let's get back to the show. I don't know if you've noticed, this is something I'm not particularly a fan of, but I gotta say, maybe it's just that social media is so much more prevalent now, but there's been a lot of wars in the last 20 years. I've never seen so many pictures of dead children on both sides. Constant pictures of dead kids. And it's really, God, it's disturbing. I really prefer to not see them. I know we talk about this a lot. I can understand that there are kids dying. I don't actually need to see the image of it. I suppose you can make an argument that it's powerful and that maybe some people do need to see that, but just so many images of them.
They kind of changed the rules a little bit here, in that it used to be like when New York Post had those articles with the ISIS beheadings, I would purposely not look because I was like, I don't need those images rattling around my brain. I don't think that's good for your brain. I don't think I just don't think. I think the horrors of having to be in war is living with the memories. If you can choose not to have to go observe those things, I don't think it's helpful for your temperament or your general sense of well-being. That's my just personal philosophy.
I agree
that it affects me. We got a problem now though that the Israelis seem to be wanting to make bold claims about like ultra animalistic behavior as an excuse for engaging in violence, and then you've got ISIS seemingly trying to brag about some of its behavior. I'm not ISIS, I guess Hamas, or the Palestinians also going, look, they've actually done this to us. And I think we're in a better environment now with Twitter, where you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt and wait for it to be validated, versus when it was kind of curated by Fox or CNN of here are the approved images for you to go see, and then you kind of have to take that as facts. I think it's almost better now that everything is false until proven true, and that it's because people have lied so much, you almost go, shit, I kind of have to look at this image and think, it's almost like a Bigfoot image now. It's like, oh, was that actually a sighting of Bigfoot?
Right.
Well, I can't read the article of you describing that there was a blurry thing out there for me to look at it and decide, oh, do I think that was a hunter or not? I kind of have to look at it. I'm saying it's a positive to me that we're in this new day and age where other people don't get to curate the information for us and decide what's true. It's a negative, though, that sides seem to want to lie about the extremity of the violence that's been perpetrated towards them, that you then have to go look and validate it for yourself.
Yeah, well, there was the thing with the babies being decapitated that even Joe Biden said had happened, and then the White House had to put out a statement saying, like, we haven't seen any evidence of this. And it is one of those things where, you see like there's a lot of there'll be people will make these claims coming off like a horrific, this horrific like Hamas terrorist attack, and they'll say, this one woman just says on a broadcast, I heard from soldiers that babies were decapitated, and then everyone's running with this thing, and you're like, oh, okay, but like, what, have we seen any evidence to corroborate that babies were decapitated? And they're like, what? Oh, what? So you're on the side of Hamas, and you just want to, and you're like, yeah, listen, you're making a claim. I want to know if this claim is true. Obviously, the attack is horrific enough with or without this claim, but you're making it. So if you're going to make it, if it comes out of the mouth of the president of the United States, I'd like to know if this is true or not. So there, yeah, it's a weird dynamic, and then at the same time, I'm also like, I'd also not like to actually see a picture of it. If there's a way that I could like, like I remember one time, it was back in the day, it was like me and Scott Wharton from a podcast we did, and someone made like a video of it, like a compilation type deal with music in the background, and we were talking about Yemen, and they just put pictures of like the starving kids over it, and I like couldn't even watch it. And it's a weird thing because it's like I'm having the conversation. I'm like I don't know. I'm up there with the people who have like raised the most awareness about what was going on in the war in Yemen. And it's like I can talk about it. I know what's happening. I don't need to see it. It's kind of like what you said too. It's like I don't actually need to like give myself war PTSD over this. Like I get it. I get how horrible it is. I don't. Anyway, there's another really interesting clip that you sent me, Rob, that I wanted to play, which was this Mark Lamont Hill clip where he's grilling an Israeli military spokesman about their response. This was very interesting. I haven't seen anybody else like this in media actually get this type of aggressive questioning off to an Israeli official. So let's play this video.
Will only deteriorate exponentially, and that crucial life-saving supplies, including fuel, food, and water, must be allowed into Gaza. So the UN is saying you must do this. You are saying you're not going to do this. How do you?
No, we're not saying that.
He's saying do it immediately. What I'm saying is what you're doing. He's saying do it immediately. Yeah,
I got you. I'll tell you exactly what we're saying. I'm saying we will do everything for the Gazan people. Once and now, we demand immediate surrender, unconditional surrender of Hamas. If Hamas people come out with their hands up and clear their weapons, believe me, everything will be restored to Gaza. It is Hamas in Hamas hands.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you for clarifying that, sir. I think we're actually on the same page here. You're saying that once Hamas leaves, you'll grant the Gazan people food, shelter, fuel, electricity, hospital, schooling. And if they don't, if Hamas doesn't leave, then they'll continue to starve and die in hospitals. You are defining for the international community right now collective punishment. You're saying until Hamas acts differently, the 2 million people in Gaza are going to be treated this way. And once Hamas acts differently, these 2 million people in Gaza will be treated better. That is exactly what collective punishment is. You're holding them accountable for the actions of others. That is the definition, the textbook definition of collective punishment, sir. Now you may accept that that's what you want to do, but this is absolutely contravention of international law.
Well, I'll tell you exactly. No, if we pushed them to the wall, we're not pushing them to the wall. We want to open a humanitarian corridor so they can leave. But if Hamas,
so then who can leave? Citizens? You're saying civilians can leave, but only to the Rafah border, correct?
At this point, yes.
So they can't come to your country. They can go to Israel.
I'm telling you one more thing I want to say.
I want you to address that point. Don't just smile, sir, respectfully. You're saying you're making a corridor. They can go to Egypt. You're bombing them. You say you want to save them, but they can't come in.
First of all, I'm not smiling. I'm crying in my heart.
He's crying in his heart, Rob. It did seem like a smile to the naked eye, but we probably just don't understand that really representing tears. Look, there's kind of just no getting around that, and I think Mark Lamont Hill did a very fair job there of saying like, look, you're turning off water, electricity, and medical supplies to over 2 million Palestinians, and the UN is saying this is like absolutely in violation of international law, and you can't do this. You have to turn that back on, and they're like, yeah, we will, as soon as Hamas surrenders. Which, look, frankly, we all know they're not going to do, right? So, and then to get to this point of well, we're telling the people to leave, and Mark Lamont Hill makes a very good point. Like, why not just let them into Israel? And then, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Now, they can argue that there's security reasons why they can't do that and stuff, but I think the bottom line is that what it comes down to is that both the United States of America and Israel, and you could argue that Russia came to this conclusion over the last couple of years, but they're just kind of like, oh no, we don't have to follow international law. Like, we don't play by those rules. So we'll bomb the shit out of another country for not following international law, but we don't have to. And there is this kind of incredible lack of caring about Palestinian life to just say like, oh yeah, well, we'll turn their water back on and electricity back on under these circumstances. But if these circumstances aren't met, then we're just not going to give it to them. Sorry. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Israelis are playing some real weasel tricks here, where they like to say it's collateral damage. The civilian life lost is collateral damage at the hands of Hamas. And it's a ridiculous game to me that they're dropping these leaflets telling a million people that they got to head south, and now having a leaflet fall on your house telling you that you have to head south is like you've been tagged, that you're now a human shield. You're no longer a person. If you stay, you are now a human shield, and so Hamas is at fault for your death, not the Israelis for having told you because they tagged you, they give you a leaflet, so now you're collateral damage. It's very similar to, maybe we can even play the clip from last week of what's his name, the lawyer guy on Fox, Alan Dershowitz on Fox, where he's saying that Israel has never killed a civilian.
Yeah. Why don't you bring that video up, Brian? It's in our text thread there that we had. But yeah, it's like the idea that, and now also, by the way, that corridor that they're telling them they have to leave through, it was also being bombed. There's some there's a lack of clarity, I guess, about who exactly was bombing them. It was first reported that it was Israel was bombing the exit. Now some people are claiming that it was actually Hamas bombing them and trying to make it look like it was the IDF doing it. Regardless of who was doing that, which I, certainly in the fog of war, especially in the first week of a war, it's hard to be sure about a lot of these details. But regardless of that, for innocent civilians who would like to leave, that now is not a viable option. So what is dropping these pamphlets saying, or these leaflets saying, hey, we'd like you to leave. Okay, now we totally have the right to bomb the shit out of these people. That doesn't pass the smell test.
I do have to ask, though, because, I mean, obviously the magnitude of what's happening here is a lot larger, but collective punishment, isn't that kind of, it seems to me like that's actually used universally. Like, we don't really trade with North Korea. It would be better for the North Koreans if we interacted with them. And you got people who are starving in North Korea. I don't think South Korea lets them out. Or, you know, how are we
Well, I don't think that's right about South Korea letting them out. Yeah, that's right. I don't think that's right about South Korea. I think South Korea will take.
You mean if you flee from North Korea, South Korea will let you, if you can just get past, you're good?
Yeah, they've taken a few defectors in. I think it's very hard for people to get out in general.
Right.
But your point is well taken about like sanctions and things like that. That is certainly collective punishment for what the government has done.
Right.
And just military actions in general. No, but sanctions I think are probably the most egregious, like I mean, short of like carpet bombing and like full-out war. I think they're an egregious example of that, where we actually go like, you know, if you think about it, sanctions on what, I don't know, take any of the countries we've had strict sanctions on, whether it's Iran or Cuba or whatever, North Korea, wherever. It's not as if their rulers aren't still living lavishly, right? It's not as if they're not still in palaces, right? Like all we're doing is saying we are going to punish the people who are under this repressive
To try and get them to overthrow their government,
Yes.
which never happens.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that's really crazy about it is that oftentimes democracy will be used as the excuse, you know, like this country isn't democratic. Although that doesn't matter, of course, in areas where, you know, like the doctrine is like that we must bring democracy to Iraq and Iran and, you know, whatever, Cuba or whoever, but not so much in, you know, Palestine or in Egypt or in Saudi Arabia or places like that. So, but we'll use that as an excuse, you know, that like, well, this guy's a tyrant and that's why we have to sanction them. But if you really think about it, wouldn't that be that much more of a reason why it's so evil to punish the people? Because you don't even have the argument that like the people are voting for this. They're like, oh, they don't even have a say in this. They're just ruled by this person. So yeah, you're absolutely right that collective punishment is not something that Israel has invented here, but they certainly are exercising it in a pretty brutal way. All right, let's go to that clip that you wanted to show. This is on Hannity, so you know it's going to be a very thoughtful, intelligent conversation. He had Alan Dershowitz there to argue the pro-Israeli side, and he had Cornel West, who's presidential candidate. Is he on, I think, for the Green Party or something, some lefty party. So yeah, let's play a little bit of that.
Okay, they are largely right, but lacking nuance.
No, I didn't say like nuance. That's the title of the piece.
Okay.
The actual words were, I got to hear from the words to it. The words were that Israel's policies of war crimes and collective punishment against Palestinians.
Israel and the United States are primarily
responsibility for killing innocent people. Anybody who kills innocent people are engaging in barbaric acts.
You said Israel,
they are, what color, what nation, and so forth.
Israel and the United States are primarily
The United States has supported and enabled.
You explain to this audience. I want you to explain. How is Israel and the United States responsible for beheading 40 children? How?
I'm talking about the context. 545 Palestinian children died in August 2004. Not one American said a word. I believe a Palestinian baby has the same value as an Israeli baby. So when you have that kind of vicious hatred and revenge, you get responsive hatred and revenge. They are all wrong. They're all war crimes. They're all to be condemned. But you cannot simply look at this particular moment without a larger backdrop of an ugly occupation and ugly attacks chronically against Palestinians.
Those are not your words. Largely right. Israel and the United States are primarily responsible for this attack. Professor Dershowitz.
Well, I complain when Palestinian children were killed, but I explain why they were killed. Here is one of the leaders of Hamas. For the Palestinian people, death has become an industry. The elderly excel at this, and so do the children. This is why we have formed human shields of the women and the children. Hamas is the ones responsible for the killing of Palestinian children. Also, Hamas has a term. It's called the CNN.
Let's pause it right here. But by the way, because there's a lot of tricks that get used in the framing of all of this stuff. And so, you know, look, even if the human shield thing, which some of their claims of being a human shield are a little bit dubious. Sometimes you're like, what do you really mean? Like that they use people as human shields? You know, there's the Israeli propaganda like a meme, which is like an Israeli soldier fighting in front of a carriage with a baby, and then it's Hamas fighting in back of a carriage with a baby, and it's like that's, you know what I mean? Like basically being like, oh, there's an asymmetry here. Like these guys are fighting so the kids don't get killed. These guys are fighting to put their kids in front of them. It's not exactly as if that's what Hamas does. It's more the claim is that they'll store munitions in hospitals and things like that. I think there have been examples of them doing this, but look, even if it was the most cartoonish version of this, right? Like, you know, you're watching a movie and the bad guy has like a little girl with a gun to his head, and the good guy's got the gun pointed at the guy. He's like, God damn it, I can't shoot now because he's got this little girl in front of him. Like, if that guy in the movie just shot the little girl in the head, like, you still wouldn't just be like, well, I mean, it's the bad guy's fault. He held up a little girl, so I'm gonna shoot him in the head. You know, you'd still be like, no. Like, if you watch that in the movie, you'd be like, well, you're not the good guy anymore. Like, I can't. That's not like acceptable. Like, even if that does make, if this were all completely true in the most cartoonish version, that would make Hamas evil. It still would not exactly be an excuse for you to just kill the kids. So that's point number one. Number two, this thing that they do, where they kind of like read off, like this is the most fucked up thing that a guy from Hamas has said, and he said this, therefore doesn't that sum up the whole situation. Just saying, you could go through some quotes of what Israeli leaders have said over the years. You know,
More animals, more chicken and such.
Yeah,
Like a week ago.
Yes, I mean,
I don't even know if that was a direct line, but that's quote.
but no, I mean, from almost every prime minister of Israel from 1948 through today, you can find quotes of them talking about how Palestinians are dogs and deserve to die, they're animals, there's no innocent Palestinians, all types of like really horrific shit like this. So it's just, you take out a quote and then you frame the issue as like, look, we have these civilized people who want peace versus these people who are saying that they're all about death. And it's like a framing tactic to just pick out one of these quotes and then kind of go from there. And they'll say these things like, you know, they'll be like, well, you know, in the founding charter of Hamas, it says that all the Israelis should be pushed into the sea or like something like that. And it's not like it's untrue. It's like, yeah, there's things like that in there, and it's pretty bad. But like the founding charter of the Likud party says that Israel ought to take over all of the land, all of Gaza and all of the West Bank. That is all Israeli territory. It's like, okay, you know, that's not great either, right? Like that's it. So you can look at a lot of these things that are like, yes, there is rhetoric on all sides that is pretty horrible, and I'm fine with calling it out. It's just like you should call it all. That's all. Okay, let's keep on.
The CNN strategy is induce Israel into killing Palestinian children by using them as human shields. Then parade the bodies out on CNN, and you'll see what happens. People like Cornel West will engage in crocodile tears, blame it on Israel, when the entire blame is on the Palestinians, Hamas, for using their children as human shields, and then using their children as shields.
What is Hamas's charter? I have the same outrage when Palestinian babies are killed.
It shouldn't be the same outrage.
You have the same indignation when Palestinians are killed.
Not when they're killed by Palestinians. When you can't wear moral comparison. When Nazi kids were killed in the bombings of Dresden, I didn't have the same comparison. When Jewish kids were put in gas chambers in crematoriums. You're a professor of theology. Don't you understand the moral difference between deliberately murdering a kid and having collateral damage because they're a human human shield. You're ready for President of the United States. What would you do? Wait, let me ask a question. What would you do if they were firing terrorists were firing American children in America, and the terrorists were hiding behind Palestinian children? Would you allow the killing of Americans to continue, or would you go and get the terrorists, even if it meant possibly collateral damage on Palestinians? What would you do?
That's exactly what I would do. First, truth and morality tend to be two casualties in any context of war. I would want to tell American people the truth. I would tell them what the context is and how we found ourselves in this situation, and not a military invasion and a genocidal attack on a
genocidal attack. Gaza. No, it's not a genocidal attack. No, you're illegal terrorists. This is like Warsaw, 1943. Where did they go? Where did they go? Let me tell you, the UN. No. The UN has places in Gaza. They go to the they go to Egypt. They go to Gaza City is very dense. Gaza itself, the Gaza Strip, there's lots of room. The Israelis have said, get out of Gaza City. Go to Rafah. Go to Khan Yunis. Go to other places. And you know what I'm saying? Wait a minute. You know what?
I mean, so, all right, let's just pause it for a second. Again, it's not. Look, even the example that Alan Dershowitz makes there, where he says, well, look, like there were children who died in Dresden or whatever, there were children who died, in the bombing campaigns against the Nazis, but no, I don't feel as bad for them as I do for the Jews who died and I don't know. I do. Like, I don't blame the children for the rise of the Nazis. And, like, to me, I go, yeah, that was an innocent kid who died in that, too. Like, why are we not supposed to have any feeling for them? Or why is it, like that doesn't make sense to me, because as a Jewish person, I don't see how that makes sense. I don't see how that kid, like, I feel bad for any kid who got killed who's, like, had no responsibility in any of this. And I guess, yeah, the question almost would come down to, like, how much did they suffer before they died? I'd rather they suffered the least amount if they were to ultimately die. But, yeah, I just don't see that as being, like, a very compelling point. And then the other thing that he's pointing out, I mean, look, this is all just, it's like your thing about that point you're making about dropping the leaflets. Like, this just doesn't, it's like, oh, no, just go out, just get out of the city and go out into, like, the wilderness. It's like, with no electricity or water or medical supplies, you're just telling 2.3 million people, just get out there, get out of the city. Like, that is just not, that's not practical. That's not feasible as an actual way of avoiding this.
A lot of just, I'm going to say, Jew weasel tricks. Hey, we're here, and we've got a mission. It's an important mission. We have no intention of hurting any innocent people whatsoever, and there might be collateral damage, but it's their fault if there's collateral damage, because we're ignoring all of the facts on the ground of where these people go. It's just, oh, well, they can just go, like,
go to the UN.
Go to the UN. What, 2 million people are going to fit in a single UN building? What are you talking about?
Yeah, like, I don't know exactly what the facilities that the UN has in Gaza are, but I'd be pretty safe in betting it can't accommodate 2.3 million people and keep them out of harm's way. Like, this is just, it's utter nonsense. You just want to make it out to be like, no, like, the Jews aren't just indiscriminately killing innocent people. But they are. Let's keep playing a little more.
No, I'm not defending Hamas. You are. I'm not defending Hamas.
Did you?
I'm not defending the suffering and the
I want to hear. I want to hear you.
Anybody who commits war crimes are barbaric. I'm saying that explicitly. I want you to say if Israeli defense forces are killing children, are they barbaric?
No. If they target children, yes. It's never in there. They ever targeted crime.
Pause again.
We can stop there because that's what I wanted to get to.
It's just the height of Jew lawyery of firstly, they make the distinction. Well, as long as they're not targeting, it doesn't matter. If you're killing a kid, you're killing a kid. You know, if I go out in my backyard and I line up a kid and I shoot him, that's really terrible. If I decide to go out in my backyard and just shoot machine guns and I'm not targeting kids and I kill a whole bunch of kids, yeah, I guess it's not as barbaric as walking out of my backyard and shooting a kid in the face. But I still just walked outside and I shot a machine gun indiscriminately into what could have been a park with kids and kids died.
Well, also, yeah, also, look,
I mean, you see what I'm saying? The distinction here of, well, if you didn't target it, it doesn't matter.
And that's not even, it's even worse than that. Like, I completely get the point you're making, and I agree with it, but it's even worse than that. It's like, if you go, all right, like, let's say one example is you walk into your backyard and you shoot a kid in the face. And the other example is there's a guy in this building you want to kill. You know that there's a bunch of kids in there. You know that firing this machine gun into the building is going to kill some of those kids. And you still do it. And you go, yeah, but I was doing it to kill the guy. I wasn't doing it to kill the kids. It's like, yeah, dude, but you knew there were kids in there. Look, also, by the way, there have been lots of incidents of the IDF actually targeting innocent civilians. So if you want to go Google mowing the grass, this is what they consider their military strategy. It explicitly involves targeting civilians. It means, like, you have to keep kind of, like, you got to keep shelling Gaza and the West Bank in order to, like, not let them grow too powerful. And it's look, when I was having that debate with Ben Dominic that Rocaine was hosting, at one point he said that line. And this is one of the things where the Israeli propaganda, they're very good at kind of repeating these slogans, and they repeat them so much that everyone else starts repeating them, even though they're just not true. They're just not true. You know, how does it go, Rob? It's like, you probably know this one. What is it? It's a land without people for a people without land. That was like the original Israeli, like, slogan. Like, that's what Israel was. Look, it's a land without people, and here's the Jews, a people without land. Except there were people there. Like, it's just not true. It's like, you know what I mean? And, like, so one of these things that gets mentioned over and over again is that Israel doesn't target civilians. Israel doesn't target civilians. And Alan Dershowitz can actually, with a straight face, say they've never targeted children. Excuse me, as we speak, they have cut off the water, electricity, and medical supplies to 1 million children. I'm sorry, that is targeting children. Again, this is like, it's like Obama's drone campaign, and them claiming that, like, this isn't really targeting, this is targeting the bad guys. It's like, well, at what point, when you know that 98% of the people killed with these strikes are innocent civilians, and then you keep having these strikes, and you know damn well before you launch them that innocent people are going to be killed, at a certain point, like, the reason I'm adding this to your point is that even in the example you use, you go, okay, it's a little bit more brutal to just kill the kid, but if I'm just waving a gun around, like, in effect, I've still killed kids. Like, the effect of it is still the same. But I'm saying, I agree with you, but then on top of that, when you know when you've gone out every day and shot guns around, and it always kills innocent people, and you continue to do it, knowing that the result of this is going to be killing innocent people, at this point, there is no distinction left. You're doing the same thing. Whether yes, they're not doing it in as viciously barbaric a way as Hamas did it, but it's still the same thing. That's still targeting innocent people. If you commit an act that you know will result in innocent people dying, that is indistinguishable from targeting innocent people. That's what I'd say. I will say. Go ahead.
Now that we've beaten up the Israeli response, which I think this is all fair criticism. I guess amidst, like, not being able to readily define, civilian from enemy, particularly what happened pre-wall with, like, the civilian bombers. I mean, with the suicide bombers and that kind of stuff. And I still, like I said, I'm a dumb hippie. I think people get along. I think most of these people just want to live their lives. But how do you get around the punishing of the collective? It's almost like not to endorse it, but it's a little bit like the Viet Cong problem. It's a little bit you're kind of in a sticky situation when you can't define specifically who the enemy even is.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. I mean, look, I think the only hope for actually making the situation better and moving forward, and I'm not saying this is an easy thing to get to, but you need kind of a new generation of leadership on both sides. Like, Netanyahu and Hamas are not going to come to any type of, like, peace. What I would like to see, ideally, would be that the Israeli response to this should be to impeach Netanyahu. And I don't know enough about Israeli law, like what he could be charged with, but I do know that the guy explicitly used the strategy of building up Hamas. as a tool to undermine Palestinian unity. He built up Hamas and then failed in the most spectacular way to protect his people from the threat that he built up. And if that doesn't mean, like, he should like be forced to go live in fucking Palestine for the rest of his life. You know what I mean? Like, he'd just be nowhere near power ever again. And what I'd like to see is them fortify their defenses in whatever way they can, figure out what the hell went on here. This is the most monumental intelligence failure perhaps in world history. It's so much worse than even like 9/11. It's just so much, like, the thing you knew that you were supposed to be protecting against the whole time you failed to protect. But what you'd like to see is, in a moment like this, some type of like transcendence where it's just like, you can come to some type of thing where it's like, look, we cannot take this anymore, and we will agree to like some of like the demands of the Palestinian people. But if anything like this ever happens again, then it's like full war. You know, you'd like to see like something of that nature. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a tough situation where there are these people in Hamas who absolutely deserve to be brought to justice, just like there are people on the Israeli side who deserve to be brought to justice. And it's pretty goddamn impossible to when they're all hiding out in this incredibly densely populated area. I'm just saying the solution to that isn't just, well, we'll kill the kids then.
And then one thing, I'm just curious, you might not know this, but how are these people in a situation where they're reliant on Israel for electricity and water?
Well, because Israel's had full blockade on the country for years now, and so Israel dictates what's allowed in and what's allowed out. So and now they say it under the guise of like they have to monitor everything that's allowed in and out because otherwise like terrorist supplies would get in. Is their like justification for it? But Israel controls completely what supplies come in and out of Palestine in every sense. They're not allowed to have an airport or a seaport. They're not allowed to have their like power plants and things like this. Israel's in complete control of all of it. This is why
Could they be self-reliant for water? Like is that?
That I don't know. I don't know exactly what their capabilities are, what their natural resources are. I don't know, but I know that they are completely dependent on Israel. And Israel does not allow the world to help, and like the world would be trying to help a lot more. For years, it's been like the U.S. has used its veto power at the UN to basically stop like Israel from being forced to stop what they're doing. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is ZBiotics. Let's face it, after a night of drinks, you don't bounce back the way you used to. I know I've been there too. That's why you gotta try ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings the day after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut, where you need it. Just remember to drink ZBiotic before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give ZBiotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/POTP right now, and you'll get 15% off your first order when you use the promo code POTP at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/POTP and use the promo code POTP at checkout for 15% off. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode. All right, let's get back into the show. Okay, but before we wrap up the show today, I did want to mention, because I guess I do want to be fair. I mean, I know people accuse both siderisms or whatever, but if I'm going to get accused of that, I should at least mention that I do try my best to attack both sides when I think they're wrong. After kind of a week of basically, I don't know if you guys have been watching the shows recently, you kind of know what my position on all this has been. But I did mention, you I think I talked about on the last podcast that, yeah, there are at some of these pro-Palestinian marches some pretty outrageous things being said, and a lot of whatever, I guess it was reported that Gas the Jews was being yelled at one of these. And so I did post something about that on Twitter recently. This was a protest at George Mason University, and they were chanting some pretty crazy things. This was my tweet, and it was very revealing and interesting what some of the responses to this were, especially for somebody like me, who's pretty well known for where I stand on this issue. But I said it's totally reasonable to criticize the Israeli government's treatment of the Palestinians and to care about the innocent Palestinian lives lost, but this is just disgusting. If you've gotten to the point where you celebrate innocent children's murderers, then you've lost your soul. You have no leg to stand on when criticizing others for taking innocent lives. So that was my post. This got a lot of interesting pushback. I had commies who were telling me, so you're telling me that you can't fight back against occupation and all of this stuff. I had one Connor Friedman who is evidently works over at the Libertarian Institute, an institute that I think I've done quite a bit to promote over the years. But he called me out for this on Twitter. He said, "There's nothing in that quote celebrating the killing of civilians. They're pointing to the asymmetry in military capabilities. You're attempting to dictate the terms of permissible discourse and jumping on the bandwagon of a campaign to paint pro-Palestinian protests as dangerous." So by the way, here's the quote. This is what they were saying. Okay? I just want to say, they said, "They've got tanks, we've got hang gliders, glory to the resistance fighters." That's what they were chanting. They were saying, "We've got hang gliders, glory to the resistance fighters." How else would you interpret that other than they're on the side of Hamas, who just came in with hang gliders and started murdering civilians? We've got hang gliders, glory to the resistance fighters. Yes, Connor, they were just talking about the asymmetry in military capability. Really? Is that the point that they were making? And then to say, I'm attempting to dictate the terms of permissible discourse. Well, I guess, kind of, yes, I'm attempting to say that the discourse of praising child murderers is pretty evil. Yes, I'm sure if there were Israelis...
But you're not saying it's illegal. You're not saying that these people should be kept from, from doing that.
I'm just saying that they lost their souls. Yeah. I'm not dictating in any type of legal sense.
And you're also not making the claim that anyone who has a pro-Palestinian attitude or thinks that the Palestinians are mistreated shouldn't be allowed to protest or say so. That's not your statement. Your statement is, if you're celebrating murder of innocent civilians on either side, you've lost humanity.
Yes, that's clearly my point. And then, so they say that's dictating the terms of permissible discourse. It's like, yeah, I'm sure if there were a bunch of Israelis cheering on dead Palestinian kids, you would not. You would say, I can't criticize them because then I would be dictating the terms of permissible discourse. Like, come on, this is so stupid. And then, I'm trying to paint all pro-Palestinian protesters as dangerous. It's like, I don't know, every one of my shows since this has happened, and pretty much every one of my tweets since this has happened, has been about how horrible the Israeli treatment of the Palestinians.
We've been over here trying to minimize what happens to the Israelis, and you're trying to pretend.
But anyway, so it was just a pretty. I mean, I only brought that one up because it's I think for someone from the Libertarian Institute to come at me like that, one of their I would say definitely one of their biggest promoters is like I wore a Libertarian Institute shirt on Rogan. I've talked them up like a bunch of times. Pretty outrageous to come at me like that, especially knowing where I stand on this issue. But it is kind of, I got called a Zionist by like a bunch of these fucking lefties. But so it's pretty interesting that like after, if you think about like if you just think about all the shows we've done since this has happened, I've also done a debate on Fox News since this has happened, like since all of this has happened. And then one time there's a group of people cheering for the murderers of children. And I go, hey, yeah, don't do that. And then they're like, oh, okay. So I see. So you're on the other side. You're really just here to limit the acceptable discourse or something like Jesus. Look, man, war makes people really stupid. I just don't know what else to say about it. On all sides, it just makes people really stupid and evil. It's a shame.
I think that this is going to turn out to be Israel's strategic blunder,
Yes.
and that it seems like the Iranians have already, probably gotten the Saudi Arabia-Israel deal at least put on pause. And I also think that with social media, Israel's going to have a hard time convincing people of this was moral because those were terrorists and the terrorists did it to their own people. I mean, that's clearly what they're trying to do is to go, these terrorists are, well, what they're trying, I mean, they go, this group of people voted for these terrorists because this group of people supports this group of terrorists. These terrorists are so barbaric, we can't deal with them on human terms, and so we have no choice but to take the following actions, and it's their own fault. The problem is, when we're seeing images of buildings just being taken down or otherwise, I think you're going to have a hard time selling people on that because it just doesn't seem to line with reality or normal logic. I just don't think
basic morality.
Yeah, and they're almost trying to go, all right, guys, what just happened to us is so terrible. We need everyone to look the other way, and we need everyone to be outraged. We need everyone to be so upset about what happened to us that you're all okay with this. Like we need you to have the same bloodlust we do. We need you to pretend as if your mom was just raped, and so what would you do? We're going to do that, and we need everybody on board. I don't think that strategy is going to work, and I don't think it's going to serve them well.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with you on that as well. And look, think about it like this: if in America let's say there was somebody who killed a bunch of innocent people, and the cops were pursuing him, and they were looking for him, and he went into like a high-rise apartment building, and they were like, okay, we know he's in there, blow up the high-rise apartment building. I don't think anybody, it wouldn't take us one fraction of a second to know exactly what just happened there. Go, no, what? You can't do that. That's just unacceptable. You can't do that. But doing that overseas, or in this case, Israel doing that over this border, over in Gaza, that's totally acceptable now. And the only reason why you could come to that conclusion is quite simply, we just don't value their life the same way we value our own life. And the reason why it's going to be tough to sell this is because it's just so obvious that that's the case. All right, we're going to wrap up there. Catch you guys next time. Peace.